And then
we
we'll be
should.
good.
Okay, call the meeting to order at 6:09. Okay,
I think we're good, thank you.
so for anybody watching or recording later, we're all learning new technology, including muting.
Somebody might have their volume.
Yeah, we're working on that.
Take your time.
Oh, boy, now what's going on? Damn.
Oh, no problem.
That's what learning is all about. It's about making mistakes.
That's right. Like that.
You missed it, Scott, when I asked how to mute my mic, and Larry's like the red button that we've been staring at forever now. Oh, right.
Oh, I
Okay.
don't know that, yeah.
I think
Is John or Elizabeth on?
Um,
I think Elizabeth might be on.
Okay.
Okay.
Elizabeth Burrows, are you with us? She might have thought it was 6:30.
No, she was gonna come later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
That's fine.
she has other commitments today. And,
Yeah, like the first day of school for her kids too.
and she had some other meetings,
Okay.
and wanted to make sure she was able to touch base with her kids between the meetings. So we'll just
That's
switch to her part when,
When we get there, yeah. And John, everybody knows John Harrison. John
I
Harrison
don't
is a,
think they do.
no. Hi.
Hi, I'm John Harrison. I'm the rep from Cavendish Weathersfield. So
Okay.
I have a connection with ESU,
Yes.
but not necessarily to her.
Okay.
but he's also on the Ed committee, so I thought when we give up,
Ah,
so
awesome.
he's gonna summarize a little of the Ed legislation and talk about the future as well.
Great.
Neat.
Thanks, Larry. I'm Nikki Buck, and I'm the chair. And then Colleen's a board member, Colleen Spence, Sarah Stewart Taylor, and Scott Richardson, and then Beth Roy is up on the screen. She's waving at you. Okay, so changes or additions to the agenda. And the only one that I have is that Elizabeth and John can give their presentation when Elizabeth is able to join us. So are there any, yes,
David, are you gonna be there all night? So we'll get you a chair.
Yeah, I will go get a chair eventually, but yeah, thank
It
you.
looks very uncomfortable,
Yeah.
so. Okay.
Well, if
want
you
me to
mind,
use one? I don't
grab
want
it, thank you.
it looks like we're gonna need one. Okay.
I
Are
can-
there any other changes or additions to the agenda? No? Okay. Okay, so I'll move on to the approval of minutes. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes of August 10th, 2021.
I move to accept those minutes.
Thank you, Beth. Got a second? Okay, Colleen as a second. And.
Thank you.
Okay,
Over the.
Thanks, over the what?
and David, is Wendy gonna watch the meetings later, or,
Yes,
okay,
yes, I'll send her the recording.
Okay.
Because I think she might have had a soccer game.
yeah, no, we're all.
It's just one of those weeks, right?
Yep. Thank you, Wendy, in advance.
That was my question. Are these Wendy notes?
Yes.
Or-
Those should be Wendy minutes that you have in your
Yes.
packet, right?
Is that something that's noted on them? Noted on the note?
Of who takes them?
Yeah.
Do you,
Or is that correct, or?
You know what, I don't know.
I didn't look at. It does not look,
I don't see that. No.
no, so that might be,
I think it'd be helpful.
yeah, a change to the
Yeah, we
minutes.
could do that.
Yeah, we could just say,
Usually it says submitted by,
yeah. Yeah, let's just,
we can,
Wendy, if you're listening, if you could just edit the minutes to say submitted by or written by or something. Okay. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. So we'll vote to approve the minutes of August 10th, 2021. Please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, minutes approved. Okay, do we have any public that wants to talk or ask questions? I saw there are two people in the meeting, and I don't know who they are.
well, one is Cat TV, I
Okay,
think.
so one's, oh, okay. right.
Actually, both might be Cat TV.
Oh, okay, there we go. Thank you. So I will check that off. Okay, so Christine, you're up with the
All
principal's report.
right, that was fast.
Let me see,
Yeah.
let me share the screen here.
Present. I shared it with you today. Had to get some first day pictures, so. I'll show you that later.
Yay.
David. All right, you can go to the next slide, David, that's just the cover. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that we approved the new hire for fourth grade since she started today.
It's always a good idea.
Her name is Heather Vitale. She is a certified teacher with a master's degree. She has been working this past year in Wethersfield. She was actually a BI in Wethersfield, and prior to that, she worked in the Woodstock School District as a support staff member. And so this is her first classroom teaching position, but she has lots of experience, lots of confidence. She came in and set the room up and started today, and it went really well. So I don't know if you want to do that during action items, but I did want to make sure I didn't forget to bring her to your attention tonight.
Yeah, do we have anything else to do during action items?
No, we'll put it under action item,
Okay, so we'll just move it down.
just so we don't forget it.
Yeah, I've got it on there. So, I'll put a star next to it too.
Okay, I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a picture of what we've been up to the last couple of weeks. We had our new teacher day on August 30th, and Heartland had 9 new staff members.
Wow.
At new teacher day, they're there in that picture with Lindsay's presenting some of our behavior support system to them. So you can't really see them all, but they're there. So it's a great crew, and it was a great day and a couple of great days of training after. So there they are. Oh, the other picture was Angie. She was presenting to all the new staff.
You should send that to me.
I will. We start out together with all the new staff in the SU, and then in the afternoon, we get to go to our own buildings and do some in-house training. So, sorry, Angie. So today, we had our first day of school, which was a wonderful, wonderful day. And I just wanted to,
Coming in with a mask. I love it.
yeah, they were so good. The kids were
They
amazing.
are so good.
I wanted to share some of the creative thinking that's been going on. So the K1 teachers, we're not allowed to use cubbies or lockers at this point, and that's a struggle. So we asked Mr. Samuel and the maintenance crew to put up some hooks outside the classroom. So that's what that is. So they have those. Kids can hang their things outside for now.
And I heard some other teachers have jealousy of those.
I bet they do.
So.
Put their requests in.
Yeah.
That was like last week.
It looks quick and cheap
Yeah,
and it solves
yeah.
a lot of problems,
It does.
which is
You know,
awesome.
I think it looks clean and tidy too, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. And there is a bit of an overhang, so I think they'll be okay if it rains. If it's torrential, it might not, but we'll see. And then that is the cafeteria, the food line, which we haven't been able to utilize with students for 18 months, right?
Yeah.
So the
18 months.
kids went through today. We have 4 different service times that are back to back and a little bit of overlap. We managed it. Not one tray fell to the floor. So I'm very excited. And the kids were so happy to be able to go down and get food and make some choices, which is really important. So that was the cafeteria. I did get into classrooms too, but I couldn't fit all the pictures on.
Was that Mary's first chance to actually get to serve kids too?
That's Mary.
Probably, pretty close.
It might be, actually.
so.
I think it might be.
But she didn't get to
Yeah,
serve them last year.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she was loving it, just
Yeah.
loving seeing the kids, so we will let you know on how it continues. A couple of hiccups, but, okay, next slide, David, thanks. So I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of Leader in Me. We did 2 days of training, so after the new teacher day, all staff, including support staff, spent 2 days of training with Leader in Me. We had 2 trainers in 2 different schools. Heartland was one school and Wethersfield was the other school. And the first day was all about the 7 habits for highly effective people, 7 habits of happy kids. It was really about staff growth and development, individual staff growth and development, and some paradigm shifts. So it was a great training. And then the second day, Didn't involve the high school. They're going to have a different training day, but it was all, it was focused on core one, which is implementation. And this slide shows you the structure. So in the first year, we're going to be focusing on 2 of those 3 areas. We're going to focus on leadership and culture. Academics will come in, it comes in anyway, but it will, those 2 areas will be our big focus this year. So each school has created a lighthouse team, leadership team, and 4 action teams. So the little yellow people on the side, 2 lighthouse coordinators. Our lighthouse coordinators are Anna Brooks and Jen Driscoll at Heartland. And then we have 4 action team leaders, and they're each leading one of those teams, one of the 2 leadership teams or one of the 2 culture teams. And we're just focusing on one area under each of those action teams. And the action team leaders are Michelle Summersell, Lacey, don't tell me, Lauren Skilling, and Donna Hatch. Yeah, we tried to get representation across the grade levels and positions. So in our collaborative practices schedule, there will be time for 2 action team meetings monthly, which is when every member on the staff joins an action team and they're working on implementation. And then there'll be 1 meeting a month for the leadership, the lighthouse teams to get together. So it's built right into that after school collaborative practice time. So that's the structure. In the second year, we focus on academics and other areas. Questions about that? We're very excited about it. So, all right. There is our lighthouse team. They had 1 day of training prior to the start of school, where all the lighthouse teams in the SU came together. We were actually at Weathersfield School and worked with our trainer for the day. So that's our team. And then I think I probably just said some of this. Lighthouse team meets monthly. Action teams meet twice per month. Before school started, during our in-house PD day, part of a day, we did an alignment activity with the staff, which we had done with the trainer as a lighthouse team and actually as an administrative team prior to that, which really what the staff had to do was they had to get in groups and identify all of the initiatives on the table. And then they had to find where those initiatives fit or were supported by Leader in Me within the 7 habits, within the paradigms. And so when you do it, you can say, oh, this all fits together. It's not one more thing, which was the point of the activity.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so in year 1, again, we're going to focus on leadership and culture. In September, probably, and in the spring, all staff, students, and parents are going to take the MRA, which is an assessment online assessment to give us some baseline data, and we can set some goals that our action teams can work on around that data, and then we can take it again in the spring to show growth. So we're pretty excited about Leader in Me. I don't know if David or Angie or Lindsay have anything else to add.
Did you have success taking all the initiatives and putting them into buckets? Okay, good.
All of them fit.
I would hope they would, but
They do.
And I think that's been the biggest challenge across the supervisory universe, is to have them not perceive this as another initiative, but
Right.
instead it's that, as was explained to us by our trainers, it's sort of the mortar that connects all the bricks, right?
Yeah.
But again, I think that the perception is that it could be new, but I think people are, especially because Heartland was one of the forerunners of trying to get this. You went and visited a couple of lighthouse
Yeah.
schools, so you saw it in action, you saw how the kids responded to it. So I think, the adoption and implementation will be a little slower in the other buildings, but I was around today and the bulletin boards are up, and I think they're investing, so that's good.
That's great.
that's great.
Awesome. Okay, just a little update. It might be on the agenda later. Anti-racism task force. So as you know, as part of collaborative practices at the end of the day, staff get to select a committee, a PLC, professional learning community, to be on. One of them is anti-racism. And what we're trying to do as an administrative team is is build leadership on those teams, so teachers can help facilitate and run those meetings and be the voice. So our leader for Heartland is Heather Pogue, and she will be phenomenal. So they will be meeting, those PLCs will be meeting. Sometimes administration will be able to be there, sometimes not, but each committee has an administrative pair or team assigned to that committee so that there is a through line and there's communication and everybody's on the same page. So David, Brittany, and I are assigned to the anti-racism committee as the administrators. So we'll be meeting with them. We're going to really work to implement the procedures, which you're all familiar with. We're also meeting this week, right, with Dr. Crum?
Next week, next
Next week
Wednesday.
to outline the next steps.
Yeah.
Nikki's probably on that.
Yeah,
as
Nikki's on
well.
that too, I think, yeah.
And we have joined the administrative team and those leaders selected for or offered to be the SU anti-racism leadership team on those PLCs. We've joined Cultivating Love, Liberation, Belonging in Every School Vermont Statewide Leadership Network with Lavelle Brown. We've all seen him. He is a superintendent who is engaged in this work, probably ahead of us.
Oh, yeah.
And he's quite amazing, actually. So we're going to be in meetings with him every month.
Once a month,
So,
yeah.
A Vermont superintendent?
He's not a Vermont
No.
superintendent. What's
Ithaca, New York.
Ithaca, New
New
York, yeah, New York.
Google him. He is amazing, Scott.
Yeah, he's been around a long time.
Lavelle Brown.
L-U-V-E-L-L-E, Brown.
Yeah.
But to just add on to what Christine's saying, I think the work with Lavelle Brown is gonna dovetail nicely with what Melissa did with us, because she set a foundation. Lavelle Brown is much more of a practitioner. What he did as a superintendent with his task force is he basically, implemented across a fairly large district a lot of these procedures, strategies, safe environments. So I think he's going to be we'll talk to Melissa about this next week, but I don't see why he wouldn't be the right next step for us, because we take it from the theoretical. A lot of what we did with Melissa was theoretical, reflective research. We read a lot of articles, listened to a lot of podcasts, and that was good because, some of us, didn't always. Yeah, there was a lot of growth that we went through, but you got to take a lot of that theory and all of that language, and you've got to implement it. And that's what Lavelle Brown has done. He's got schools that have really just embraced it.
Well,
Angie and I had gone to a conference,
Oh, a couple of years
yeah,
ago.
maybe
3 or 4
4 years ago.
Okay.
And then the state, basically, because we're paying a very reduced rate to be with him, and
yeah,
because the state's underwriting a lot of this, so.
he was at VPA this summer.
And he did the VPA leadership
okay.
conference this summer. Yeah, he's very well known, and if you Google him, like Christine's.
Yes, well, we were in Stowe this year.
Yeah, no, that worked out pretty well because you got a little taste of him too, and everybody really said, yeah, I think he's the one to do this.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
your slide of the anti-racism is, silly, but this is for Heartland School District. And so the other committees around the SU will also meet with Mr. Brown?
Yes.
So, well, because we've set up collaborative practice time, Scott, the committees are going to start out as SU committees with representation from all the schools. So the anti-racism task force has representation from all the schools. Now, they may break off into subgroups and do specific building work, but at the beginning, they'll be all together to set their goal and their mission for the year. If that
Okay.
makes sense, yeah.
All right.
Or did I?
Well, I mean, because it specifically says Christine, David.
Yeah, Christine, David, and
Yeah.
Brittany, who's now an SU employee, will be the leaders
I
SU-wide
thought
in
it's on
this.
Nikki's. I thought Nikki was noted in this.
Nikki's
No.
on the
Oh, okay.
Melissa
I'm sorry.
Crum.
Nope.
Nikki's been involved in the Dr.
I'm
Crum work.
getting
Yeah.
Brittany, Nikki, and the
Okay.
She is welcome to continue to join us on this work. She has time. So we'll report out on what we're learning, what we're doing. The goal is actually for those PLCs, we're trying to call them professional learning
Communities, right?
to we're developing a mechanism so that they can report back, so that we can use their voices here as well. Maybe they'll come and present.
Yeah.
better. So,
Will they like go around between different schools, or will they join by Google Meet, or?
because of COVID, we'll be doing.
We'll probably use Google
remotely,
Meet, yeah.
Yeah,
We'll use
Remotely.
Google Meet.
yeah, and it's more, it eliminates travel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as John and Elizabeth will tell you, from a state perspective, this is very much on their agenda too, and there's that big equity caucus. I don't know whether you go to those meetings or not. I know Elizabeth does, and, so, I mean, I think there's gonna be a lot of state support for that kind of work as we move forward too, so.
It permeates just about everything that's happening at the state level.
Yeah, in fact, I just got sent the EQS standards
Yeah.
from Jay at the VPA and they've made some edits, just for
Bias.
Just for us to look at, yeah, and they've
Right.
embedded a lot of this equity. and
Of the equity work, yeah, that's great.
So that'll be
We'll
good.
keep you posted.
All right, next slide, equity, almost you, Jamie,
Yep.
do the next one.
And just for
Thank you
people
for
watching
coming.
the agenda, we're moving equity up to the principal's report.
Good.
Yeah, so last month we talked about some equity issues that have come to the surface in our school, one of them being winter activities, and you asked for some rough estimates of what it would cost to, for the school to fund this program, so that parents wouldn't have to pay for it, to make it equitable and accessible to all. So I worked with John Leonard at the rec department, and here are the cost estimates. So it's about $100 per kid to rent equipment. It's about $75 per lesson. Now that cost obviously could change. And then there are some staff passes that are bought because staff go and chaperone and we don't expect that. So the total estimate for the program, if everyone participated, would be $45,500 in a given year, which doesn't account for buses. Those are separate. So it's a big chunk of money. I guess the question is, a couple of questions. What if kids don't want to do it? What if they're choosing not to do it because they don't want to do it? What do we do with them? Do we offer a different program and pay for that as well? So those are things to consider. This is the transportation costs are to and from, because we know how hard it is on parents to go and pick up at the mountain. So that's for you to think about.
Which
Yeah,
mountain?
it is Suicide 6.
I don't know.
No, it's not on there. It's Suicide 6.
Is that what you used in effect?
Yeah, and so you can think about that, we can talk about it more tonight if you want, or kind of sit on it. John does ask me to ask you if you would consider allowing it. We're not anticipating a program this year, but as last year, parents were offered discounted, families were offered discounted tickets and could go. And so John would like to continue that. It means the kids potentially get picked up early from school, and would that be excused from the board's perspective?
Has it been was it excused last year?
But last year, the school ended earlier.
So this would be, it will be disruptive. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I mean, my
that's
question to you is what's the implication of that?
It's kids missing at the end of the day every week for 5 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever the program runs.
Well, and that's why we switched to a whole school program to begin with, so it's disruptive to the kids.
And the teachers and, the rest of the class. And then it's, who's responsible for making up the work? Do the teachers then have to make sure those kids that are missing get that work? And so it is complicated.
I also worry a little bit about the school then having to police that, like a parent's picking a kid up at 1, are we then saying, are you really going skiing, or are you?
Where are you
Going
going?
to McDonald's for lunch? What's,
Well, would the idea be that there would be lessons on like a Tuesday at Suicide 6 for Heartland kids, or?
It's not gonna be a Tuesday because they're not open on Sunday, Monday,
Right.
Tuesday. It's probably gonna be a Thursday, he said,
Okay.
not a Friday, because he said, how about Friday? But
It's gonna be 1 day a week.
It's 1 day a week for the program, the duration of the program.
I feel like you could pick it up at 2. I mean, school is essentially done at 2.
The mountain closes at 4.
Right, but, I don't
By the
know.
time you get up there and gear on, it's 2:45.
Yeah.
That's true. Get an hour in. You haven't done it this way before, though. I had the same
No.
question Colleen
Well, not
had.
in my tenure, no.
Well, I mean,
Okay.
in
I
the
don't remember.
program, most of the kids left at noon on Tuesday or Friday, this Friday, and then it turned into Tuesday. I wouldn't see it as being any different from, I mean, I realize it's different, but.
The difference would be,
time-wise.
the difference would be when we did it whole school, and I'm not gonna say the teachers stopped teaching because they don't, they're teaching in a different way, right? There are different activities for kids to participate in.
Right.
So everybody's doing something, right?
I was gonna say, all the kids were involved.
They're skiing, yeah, they're doing
Yeah,
It's
something,
a global winter program.
right?
Right.
So in this model, some kids, I don't know how many, are gonna leave school probably before 1 o'clock to be out the door at 1 o'clock,
And the rest of the kids.
are gonna be in class.
But this is only gonna be kids that can get picked up by their parents.
Whose parents aren't working at 1 o'clock.
Exactly.
Which is
Parents
also a
what,
bit of
aren't
an
working?
equity.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know.
I don't like the optics of that, of some kids trailing out.
Well, that's why we
And
switched to the whole school to begin
Exactly,
with.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that does not seem inclusive whatsoever. As much as I have the flexibility and would love to go skiing every Thursday, that doesn't seem equitable.
It's not equitable.
Opposite direction of what we were just talking about. So it's like,
However, we've done it every year, so I hate to.
Well, we haven't
We
done it
haven't
this
done
way.
this, we haven't done it.
We haven't done this way.
No.
And what did we, last year we didn't do it this way, right?
Last year, there were discounted passes and families went, but kids were dismissed earlier, so it wasn't,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just took our passes and
Yeah.
went skiing when we could at our house.
Yeah.
It wasn't during the school day. We were glad to have the discounted passes.
Right, so I think the question here is, I think John's asking is, should he arrange a rec time
Right.
for lessons?
Yeah.
Or do we skip this year?
Sounds like no.
yeah, and I think last year lessons weren't an option. It was just discounted tickets for parents if they want to go for their kids, discounted tickets for kids on that day.
Families want discounted tickets for pick a day a week. I think we could set, the rec could offer that, but I don't think I don't think that having kids leave early sounds like what we're saying. That's the part that doesn't feel equitable.
Yeah.
I think it's fine as a rec program to offer to people that they can get a discounted pass to ski for an hour on Thursday afternoon or something, but.
So I guess backing up,
What's the next one?
why is there no winter program?
Well,
there is no
Copit.
program because of COVID. We're not
No,
mixing.
but it can- Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Well, it's just those programs, you're mixing kids from all grade
It's just-
levels
It
and,
doesn't
yeah.
go with the COVID mitigation.
And Suicide Six probably wouldn't want to do it.
Probably
They have very strict.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So as much as we're trying to get back to school 5 days a week, a whole day, this is a bridge too far for winter, 1 day a week. Crafts and outdoor activities, and skiing was one of those
Yes,
things. And
so I am fine to share that with John. Discounted tickets for families offered from the rec is great. If a family chooses to leave school early on a particular day of the week and they call their child out,
We have no control.
we have no control over that. I mean, we have control over is it excused or not excused. They,
Oh, yeah.
So say miracles happen and things are improving in COVID land. And when is the date? Like, have we already said, no, we're not doing winter programming and we won't change that opportunity? If for some reason tomorrow they say vaccinations for all, how much leeway would we need to plan for something like that if we were going to be able to do it?
we usually
Is
start
that just
planning.
crazy making?
No, we tend to start around the fall, like early October. So I wouldn't say it's a done deal, Beth, but I think from John's perspective from the mountain, it's not gonna look the same this year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But if for some reason there is a vaccine, and I mean, it depends who gets vaccinated, you know, there's a lot of logistics around that, but. So I will share that.
So
with you.
what constitutes an excused absence?
Well, you need to be sick.
Well, yeah, so that's one.
Or, I mean, sometimes we'll excuse, like a family is gonna have a family vacation.
Vacation or
and It's an
outing.
experience, that comes through David, I mean, he, you know, if it's more
Yeah,
than a
by
day
law,
or
I
two,
can excuse up to, I think, 10 days,
10
9 or
days,
10 days.
yep, so they just email him and he, you know.
But like doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, things that can't be scheduled other times, those are all excused, right?
I mean,
That kind of stuff.
Opportunities, like
Mhm.
when kids go and run the mics at town meeting.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
and, but, so I guess looking at that from the lens of, we used to, as a school, count this as learning.
Well, yeah, I can see parents saying, this is a mental health afternoon for my kid. Skiing is their life, and, you know, like, we can't afford it any other day other than when it's a discounted ticket. Well, you know, are we just gonna, I think we have to figure out a rule around that.
I mean, it doesn't bother me to excuse that absence because no, it's not, there's not an awareness around the whole school of like, these kids get to go and these kids don't get to go.
Right.
That's just handled very quietly in the office, and I don't think anybody even.
Well, and I would say of the same thing, like if a family wants to take their kid cross-country for an afternoon,
We excuse it.
yeah, like go cross-country skiing.
So-
That's a learning activity and it's,
As long as it's not being abused. you know.
yeah.
So that's interesting, because then now we're right back at where, the original proposal.
I think this is a more formal, this is John creating a program.
This would almost be
Okay.
encouraging it, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's our
Promoting it.
compromise, is like, it's not a formal program, but
You get discounted tickets and you wanna go on a Monday or whenever they're open. I
Yeah.
think that's different than 75 kids all leaving all
Yeah,
at once.
right, yeah.
yes, I agree.
And I guess because we used to count it as an educational activity, I feel like making it excused is appropriate.
Yeah.
And I would argue that there are other educational opportunities that we also used to offer that should also be excused if a family does that. And they're gonna miss an hour and a half of school.
I'm good with that. David, you good with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's still coming down to, you know, who can.
Yeah.
Who can get it done.
Right, it's coming down to which parents can do
Which
it.
parents are available, right? So
Right,
that's,
But if we're not running the program this year, you know, I think it gives us a year now to really know and think and budget. You know, that gives us that opportunity. I mean, this whole conversation honestly makes me a little weepy because it's just so sad of like skiing in Vermont and we can't do it again. You know, like it just is, yeah, it's just overall. So I think, I don't know, for me, I'm just trying to keep the mindset of like, how can we just, now that we know this information, how can we plan forward to make it more successful in next winter?
Chance to.
well, and for me, it's like critical that we raise future Vermonters, and so we
Yeah.
need those opportunities that make those kids Vermonters, and if you can't survive in the winter out here, you're
So
not
are
gonna
we-
be a Vermonter.
are we just unable to, allow John to help some students get there? I'm not saying that right. And how could John help some students who don't have parents that can do that?
John,
Well, I
can
mean,
you
that's
rec-
sort of what we're looking at up here for the year after this year, when hopefully COVID is gone.
No, I mean, I think there's something in between. Someone who has ski equipment, who has the knowledge, but whose parents aren't available on Thursday afternoon.
So that's a ski program, Scott. That means it's a formal school program, which is, I think what he was hoping to get, but it's not gonna be every kid in the school, right? It's just not this year. So it might be, I don't know, 50, it might be 75, which causes the disruption, which, you know, so it's complicated. If he wanted to run that program, it would still involve, I don't know what the transportation would look like. In a normal year, we send buses, and parents have to pick up at 4 o'clock. And a lot of parents go and participate in school.
Yeah, right. That's, we talked about that doing troublesome too, the pickup.
I know that the PE teachers have done some work around, getting a few pairs of snowshoes and some cross-country skis. And I'm thinking about sort of
At school.
Nikki, I'm thinking about Nikki's point about, Vermont winter activities and how can we incorporate those much more into our existing PE program and giving kids those experiences.
Well, and even the sledding is.
They do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's
Yeah.
awesome. I'd love to see some cross-country ski equipment, some snowshoes. Yep.
But I think, the kids also, I think just doing general like winter survival skills and things like that in PE, like that's really fun. Shelter building, fire building, all those kinds of things that could be PE, could be regular class. There's a lot of engineering and design and all of that. So I think it's also working with teachers to really think about how are they using their outdoor classroom, all winter. And making sure kids have gear. How can we just get more gear to kids?
So this idea we're keeping very much on our radar screen for a year from now.
Well, September, October.
September.
You start budgeting now.
So it's very much on our radar screen.
Very much on our
And in the meantime, kids will be excused if they happen to be going skiing, but there will be no organized program. Does everyone feel comfortable? That sounds good.
Yeah. I want to ask about excused absences, as long as it's come up in these days, the time of COVID. How are we looking at absences today versus 2 years ago before the pandemic?
Great question. We just actually had a meeting with ECF and, what was that man from? Not Bridge. So anyway, we
I
had,
know what you,
Program. Sorry.
so we met, the administrative team met with this group actually at our last admin meeting, I think.
Yeah.
Because truancy is a big issue. And they were looking for feedback on our truancy policy, the Windsor County truancy policy. And so it got really complicated in COVID because we try to be consistent. There is some subjectivity, right?
Sure.
But I think what we agreed on was when a child gets to 10 days absent, which could be very legit, like you could be out with the flu for 10 days, you could be quarantining for 10 days.
10 days in a row or 10 days for the year?
Just 10 days. So we all agreed to send a letter, which is just an informational letter. Your child has missed 10 days of school. Excused absences. So it could be just an informative letter. It could be, depending on the situation, if there's a concern of truancy, a letter that states, from this point forward, if you call your child out sick, we will require a doctor's note, or it will become an unexcused absence. And then that triggers some other things that
So
happen.
unexcused, when you get into having a bunch of unexcused, that's all.
That triggers a call to DCF, that triggers, a meeting with the parents, yes. And it's all in the frame of we want to support and help you, what can we do? That's the lens that we come at from. But yeah, that's the
I mean,
plan.
we don't want people coming in because they're worried about unexcused absences, sending in the kids to kids.
Right, yeah.
We want to make sure.
Yeah, and we make notes in our Empower School, like students in quarantine, so we know like why the student's not there, which is reflected. So, does that answer your question?
It does.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Jamie, you ready?
I have one more thing to say.
Sure.
Sorry, about stuck on the skiing thing. I'm looking at the equity policy that the SU adopted May of 21. So it's only 3+ months old. And it's pretty darn clear what implementation is. Provide every student with equitable access to high quality and culturally diverse instruction, curriculum support, facilities, technology, other educational resources that respect their individual identities, cultures, backgrounds, abilities, experiences. I don't know how you avoid, or I don't know how you award one child an unexcused absence when another child may have some kind of life disruption and skied 2 years ago, but can't figure it out this winter.
You mean excused?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excused.
How do you offer an excused absence for one family, one student? Like you're kind of lifting up the idea of skiing on a Thursday and leaving school, and with someone else in the student body.
Doesn't have that
We're not really lifting.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott, I think like if I said, hey, Christine, I'm going to pull my kids out because we're going to go to the Met for the afternoon. You know, I think that would be an excused absence as well, because that's a culturally relevant and educational opportunity. So I think it's more having to do with parents just communicating clearly why their child is absent.
I also think that, like, you're right, Scott, and I think we all agree with you, but I think there's this idea of, like, what we really want is to give every kid the opportunity to ski for a variety of reasons, COVID primary among them, but also financial. We haven't quite figured that out yet. And this is sort of a mental health boost,
Okay,
perhaps, in
here's
an unusual year, and it would only be for this year. I mean, that's my
I'm
understanding.
not arguing with you, but because I'm just being redundant here because this is so brand new. Here's another bullet. Identify and counteract biased practices that perpetuate achievement disparities and opportunity gaps. Counteract practices that perpetuate opportunity gaps. We're perpetuating an opportunity gap.
This is one of those. It is, you're absolutely
Except
right.
that the only difference is, if I'm understanding this right, is one is parent driven. Like I just got I've gotten 2 requests in the last week for a family to go 10 days down to Disney World. Not every kid is going to have that opportunity, right? But that's parent driven, and it's within the confines of the law. So it's rare. I mean, I'll always ask the principal, is this student way behind? Is the student, you know, and then if they say no, that's fine, then I generally approve it. So that's parent driven versus school driven. And I think what I'm hearing is with sort of the COVID conditions we're in, I would treat a request, and that's why I think I'd be careful, you know, both to Christine and Lindsay. I don't know if I would just give 5 Thursdays in a row. I mean, I think I'd take it, you know, this kid needs a break. We've got the passes, blah, blah, blah. And then we'd almost treat it like, you know, the Disney World situation in terms of just a family event, a family break. And I understand completely, not every kid is going to have access to that, but that's the way it operates now. I think when something school sponsored happens, what I'm hearing on the table is we're going to try hard to financially support that so that it's going to be inclusive for everybody. You know, I mean, I think, yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to make a distinction because I understand exactly what you're saying, Scott, but I think it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I understand that we can't fix all the ills and all the imbalance in the world from the board, from the school board room.
You can move my stuff over.
But it doesn't-
Yeah, no, we're
it
not.
doesn't seem fair.
Don't you wish we could
Is that
though?
your phone, David?
Yeah, the phone,
And it's-
that, thank you.
I wouldn't be comfortable approving this
Hi,
going
John.
forward, right? I mean, as
Well,
a
but this is
policy.
the same
It's
as
a
kids
COVID.
going to sporting events.
Right, which happens.
Which
Kids get
happens.
signed out for hockey games.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same as that. And
Or
those
quite
are
frankly,
still,
kids who play sports because they've had the, you know,
Well, they have
the
the
support
privilege
and the
to-
privilege and the money to ski
That's right,
or to
that's true, right.
play
Very
hockey
good
or,
point. Yeah.
you know.
Get to practice, get cleats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd love to think, like Scott said,
Huge
we'd
amounts
reach a
of
day where
privilege
we could
in athletics, yeah.
spread that out, but just,
but it is, I mean, it's still.
it is what it is.
So we
It's
disrupt it.
it's temporary, I mean, it's a
Disrupt it.
stopgap until
Yeah.
we can.
Well, a way to disrupt it is
Yeah.
what you're, whether that'll cut the budget mustard or not, I don't know, but it's a good way to disrupt, if you
Are
know
there
what I mean.
sports, opportunities in every season that don't require, extra monies?
No, they
No.
all require transportation. so-
Yeah, and parental involvement.
Meaning the parents have to get them back and forth, especially.
The schedule privilege.
And just equipment. I mean, a new pair of basketball sneakers. Like everything requires money. It seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The rec
that's
does
right.
help with that.
You buy 'em and then they smell.
So we've got some work to do.
We've got work to
We
do, yeah.
definitely do.
But we're working on it.
Yeah, slow, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to emphasize that we have the policy on the books.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
We don't have, luxury, too much time as a luxury.
Think we'll
Okay.
start.
Jamie's been very, very
I'm gonna
patient
just
down
turn
there.
this over to Jamie if she's comfortable with that. She's done
Yeah,
all
yeah.
of the legwork. I sent her an email and said, please help me. And so, she was tasked with a big job of finding out what it would cost to fund, instrument lessons for the entire student body, and she's done a great job. So, David, do you want that link clicked on?
Want to click on the link
Yeah.
now, or do you want to
Yeah.
talk?
Yep. So this is,
Oh, sorry, David, you need access. Hold on.
I bet you can give me that.
I can. Yeah.
and then I asked about what the goal was, because I
I
just
got it
received
now.
it, like, what would it cost?
Yeah.
And I said, there's a lot that goes, a lot that goes into it. It helps me to come up with something more thorough if I know what the end game purpose is, which was equity, within the program. So, I did the
We're gonna bring it
baseline.
up. You think we're ready?
Yeah. All this is an Ellis Music estimate. I did the estimate based on 35 kids in one grade level, which I've learned to understand that our up and coming grade levels are a bit smaller. It'll affect these numbers marginally. There's one that's in the bottom, which I had asked her to break out the annual versus the one-time cost, but, so the 465 for the music stands, that's just because if we did end up, this is with the maximum amount of 35 kids per grade level, if every single person decided to play a band instrument, and I had a perfect world where it was totally balanced with how many kids played each instrument, then this is what it would cost annually for one grade level minus the $465.50, because that's a one-time purchase of the music stands that we would need because we don't have enough to support the bands of that size. So this is one grade level. We would have to multiply that by 9 roughly, because we teach 4th through 8th grade in our school, but those kids go on and play their band instruments when they're in high school, and we're still financially responsible for their education. So it would mean that we are not just, if we were gonna fund it for,
You do it K-12.
right,
That's interesting.
Well, 412.
I mean,
412.
No, 412, sorry.
but a lot of high schools provide.
Some do, some don't, and quite
Right.
frankly, but I mean, this number is so rough, and I was gonna get to Yeah. it. This is kind of a big conversation, and I'll just try my best to hit key points, and please feel free to stop me at any point so that I can explain my rationale or whatever a little bit better. Because also within these numbers, there's just so many variables, and because you can see the difference between someone signing up to be a percussionist, 5 kids playing percussion for a year costs $259, but 5 kids playing alto sax is, $2,200.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of variables in there depending on, and I believe in student choice and what instrument that they want to play. That's usually the instrument that they're most successful on. So I always give them, as long as Ellis has enough in-house, I give them what their first choice is. So there's a lot of things that vary in there. I asked Ellis Music Company about a break, since we'd be such great customers, and they said the only break they could give us is tax-free rental. They said that we would have a 9-month rental program, so we wouldn't have to pay through the summer months, which is what most parents do. By the end of, and that the cost of the instruments that they rent out vary even from one flute to another flute. One flute might have a price tag of $800 on it. Another one might have a price tag of $1,200 because they try to rent out as many refurbished instruments so that they're low cost as possible. We have students by the time they've gotten 2 to 3 years in our program that own their instrument, and then we have, and so they're no longer paying rental, which also means it's no longer insured. So then you end up with a bunch of repair costs to keep everything going at that point. And then we also have students that still, like their second year in high school, if they're playing something like saxophone, who might not own it yet. There's also the piece of Alice Music Company in their first 9 months of their rental program, they 100% of your rental goes towards the ownership of the instrument. So the most economic time to purchase that instrument is after the 9 months, because then you can choose to buy the instrument and it'll be the cheapest to get it at that point. And then there's also like after that, I think it's like an 80-20 thing for the next couple of years. I'm not familiar with all of their details, but I do know that that's the most economic time to buy it. So there's a bunch of factors that are in there and factored in within the cost. There's also the piece of, you throw a bunch of money at making it so that more kids can and want to play instruments, and then you have bigger bands, and then you need the time and music teacher schedule.
And the space.
And the space, right. The time and the space in order to have bands of this size. And even if the numbers were down to 25, we're still looking at, because Heartland doesn't have a proper band room, we have a classroom that we do band in, then we don't have space for like any more than, if we were to try to combine, because the space completely affects the amount of time that you need to teach it. Because if I can combine a 7th and 8th grade band together to meet together, then that's 2 rehearsals a week for 2 grade levels. But if I can't combine them, and it's 2 7th grade meetings per week and 2 8th grade, and so then that just sort of, the numbers don't affect that. The fact that this is based on 35, we could do 35 with our current space, and we could do 25. We cannot do 50. We just won't fit within that space. So it was my guesstimate, if we maintain the best practice of 2 times a week band rehearsal, 1 time a week lesson, that you're looking at, and the lesson is a small group of 2 to 4 kids, that you're looking at about 5 hours of teaching time per grade level. So you're looking at almost a whole day for 4th through 8th grade, which is, 5 grade levels. So you're looking at almost 1 full-time position to just serve this. 5 hours is a little under what the average teacher has in contact time within a day. So, that other time, because that our instrumental program or a instrumental program should be more than just what your, band instruments are. And so if you had like an enrichment ensemble, like a jazz band or a percussion ensemble, like sort of leave some time for that type of thing too. And then if our goal is equity, then, takes more than paying for the rental of the instrument for all children to be successful and included within a program. So, we're not unique in having the issue of kids who can't bring their band instruments home, or they can't practice them at home for one reason or another. I've heard a slew of legitimate reasons why instruments do not go home, or why they cannot play them once they're home, or if they do bring them home, they have trouble getting them back. A slew of them. So if you're going to build an equitable program, then like that contact time of 3 times a week keeps kids playing pretty regularly with 2 rehearsals and 1 lesson time. But then you also have to consider, like I've run like studio times where kids can sign out a room to practice on their own time. And last year, actually, I keep thinking 2 years ago was last year. That group of 8th graders or 7th graders really, really took advantage of that opportunity, and a lot of them were involved in so many things. And that was their reason, completely legitimate, not getting home until 8 p.m., really wanting to be successful in their band instruments. So they would come during
a recess or a break on their own volition in a small group and sign out a space to be able to practice their instruments while I was working with other students in a parallel space. So factoring in that kind of time so that students who cannot bring their instruments home can do it. So I think one FTE to serve all of that, including some studio time, would probably cut it. So obviously that's pretty expensive. Looking at that times 9 with a lot of variables. This step of funding an entire band program, because I also have a lot of thoughts and ideas and a lot of the ways that and I consulted with colleagues from other states that do this and have contracts drawn up, much like I think our like Chromebook stuff where students, parents sign off so they pay for some repairs, or they have to do something to have them be fully invested in their instrument too, because we can't lose that along the way, otherwise nobody wins. So, some thoughts on that, but also that this is the final step that one would take to build an equitable program. And the first couple of steps that you should take for your equitable, instrumental, or performance-based program are significantly cheaper than this. And if you do them right, this number goes down drastically once you get there.
So what are they?
Tell us. Building core programs from kindergarten through the 4th grade time when they have the option to take a band instrument, so they are not experimenting with performance and ensemble in a very at a very high level. Playing these instruments is considered a pretty high level, and bands and orchestras are the most expensive ensembles you could fund in your school. So there's a whole lot of other options that you can provide consistently from kindergarten through 4th grade, so that by the time they get to 4th grade and they're given all these, it's not this complete foreign idea as to like, I don't know if I like to be on stage. I don't know if I'm gonna like playing with others. I don't know if I have the time at home to practice. And so they're spending a couple of $1,000s a year figuring that out when we could have figured that out for the years leading up to it with proper programs in place to do so. And I did start this work with Jeff Marino I think it was his 2nd year here. And that's when we got the 2nd room. That's when we spent money on keyboards and ukuleles and guitars. And we fit the hand drumming program in to be way more accessible to more kids more consistently. And those are some of our core programs that we've lost through the years, and they barely exist at base level now. And so if we were to work towards getting some of those programs back in consistently, and part of what we did too is we split it up, because the way the positions were divided was like by grade level, like one of us top K4 and the other top 5-8, and then 4 or 5 sort of overlapped a little bit, but that was how it was divided. And then so we decided that the best way to do it, best practice, was to divide it so that one person was the instrumental and then one person was the choral. And just by nature of the beast, the choral one tends to have more time in their schedule to do music classes in general. And so it was with that at that time that we started the ukulele, guitar, keyboarding, pull-out instructions for K2, and the drumming ensembles for grades 3 through 8 were scheduled at times that were really accessible. And and there was a 3rd grade recorder class that wasn't just tried to like squish it in with amongst 3rd grade curriculum. It was just its own thing. So they had those steps along the way. And the good news with that is we have most of that equipment already purchased. We have, COVID got rid of a lot of our stuff. I'm learning as I'm pulling things out. A lot of our ukuleles and guitars that were there pre-COVID are no longer there. But I'm not really sure.
We borrowed one. I have one here, so
Okay.
get that back to you.
I know that there are a lot of lending, which we're going to send out all calls to see how many of those things that we can get back. But I have no doubt that we'll get back a majority of the instruments that we loaned out, because a lot of kids decided to pursue, remote instruction and take up instruments through the pandemic. And we had all this stuff that was just sitting there. They're like, these kids should be using this stuff. So, but a lot of the guitars were in really rough shape by that point anyway, and the keyboards too, but we have a good base of the equipment and stuff set. So, I think the first step is mostly there. I think the second step is, making sure that we have the equipment to get those equitable ensembles opportunities in drumming and in some instrumental pull-out instruction in the K2 with those. And I think that was born from someone asking about having Upper Valley Music Center come into the school and do like violin lessons with kids in younger grades. And that was when I was like, the last thing we need is one more thing that is only for the kids who can afford it.
Right.
If we want to add more instrumental instruction, we need to start building equity within our program and buying a bunch of ukuleles. And the kids who did it, I mean, they really benefited quite a bit from it. They enjoyed it. You're always going to have the kids that are going to go out and then buy their own ukulele, and so you can't avoid having that sort of situation. But I think that would be our first step.
So we have all the instruments and.
We have most.
Wait, we have a start.
We have a start.
To build a core program. How are we for time? Is that like, we've got
That's an issue.
1.6 teachers right now?
I mean, this year I can't fit. I don't have. We've lost like 2/3 of the hand drumming program. The K2 instrumental stuff is. I'm pretty sure it's going to practically cease to exist unless like a grade level can fit in a thing. I mean, 7-8 music class, like that's a huge thing where having a music class for 7th and 8th graders is another opportunity to get kids' hands on instruments to play, and we don't have that in our schedule this year either. And I'm looking at, today was the first day of school, and I already have a wait list because I can't serve all the kids who actually have band instruments. I think this will be one of the first times ever that I won't be able to teach everybody who has a band instrument. Yeah. You just know. And that will definitely, like the ones that are first on the list are the ones who have been playing through the pandemic. And we made a commitment when we said we weren't going to start fourth graders last year. We made a commitment that we were going to start 4th and 5th grade this year. So there's going to be pretty large groups I'm anticipating. And so there's a whole category of kids that did not sign up for remote lessons, but are instrumental, and they're starting to come back. And we have a bunch of new students at the school that would like to be a part of the band program as well. I just have any schedule.
Did something change with your schedule?
Yes, something did change. We shortened the day. Jamie's teaching 5th and 6th grade because the schedule's really complicated, and Becca's 3 days a week, so there's lots of dominoes, so it's really complicated.
Yeah, my class load is about three times what it was the pre-COVID, which is why I can't serve the kids that I was able to serve 2 years ago.
And will we be able to change that back around?
In the future?
Yes.
I mean, it's not like Becca has extra time in her. She has one period where we're trying to fit in the ukulele in 1st grade. So she could take on more of the teaching, and then Jamie could take on more of the band lessons if Becca had more days in her schedule.
Where does she go? Does she have a job the other 2 days?
Well, she's subbing for me. Yes.
But she's not splitting them.
So yes.
She's not. No, we're trying to keep her,
Trying to keep her, I remember we talked about that, yeah, so we don't lose her.
But
Well,
it
again,
is-
that's another budget question,
It's a
right?
budget question, of adding.
That's a budget question.
There's an opportunity to.
Which would free up Jamie, which would allow for her to,
Put back in place our equitable programs, which putting it back in drumming and putting back in the K2 instrumental stuff, I'm not saying that that's a substitute for this. I'm just saying like that's a first step. Because what we're going to have is really high numbers, and we're going to have really high dropout if we take our current instrumental program and then start doing this first. We're definitely gonna have a lot of kids sign up and a lot of kids spend a year with me trying really hard to get them enthusiastic about something that they've realized pretty quickly that they don't want to do.
Right, and parents who were, you know, who were nudging them, and it's not a good dynamic. I mean, it's, the one thing that occurs to me is also as a first step, and I'm grateful to Scott for always keeping our mind on the bigger picture and what, you know, and the policy and the total, and, you know, really total equity. But I know some schools have scholarship funds so that if there's a kid who expresses a desire to play an instrument, but their family just can't swing it, that maybe, you know, that there's a fund somewhere, and it can very quietly be sort of handled.
And that's a good, if this doesn't happen, then if this can happen, if we do all the other things and this is still going to be too much, then there's definitely better things we can do than what we're doing right now. We have a program, I have a collection of instruments that are, yeah, so, I mean, I have a ton of snare drums and trumpets happen to be the top two things I have. So I have parents or students that come to me, and I even have a couple of clarinets that I can convince to work for a couple of years. So they, you know, I definitely have an arsenal of instruments, we are on a rotating schedule as to which ones we get repaired that year. So I could put together numbers if we get to that point of what it would cost to make at least one or two of every family of instrument that we own working. So that way we have a higher quality instrument for the students who need to be on scholarship. And I've expressed it up and down with students, and that doesn't mean they're gonna come forward, that doesn't mean their parents are gonna come forward, but I definitely have a couple every year, and I find a way to make them. Yeah, absolutely.
I wondered if that was.
So I just have a quick question. So what I'm hearing is the immediate real issue in taking any step toward equity is really looking at our staffing more closely. Because what I'm hearing is that we really need 2 full-time staff members within music if we want to try to take any step toward an equitable music program, right? And so, are we, I mean, is there any ability to say, to move on that for this school year, or do we really have to wait an entire budget season? Because I feel like, you know, there is ESSER funds around, and I know Angie's probably cringing as I even use that word, that, you know, what, isn't this like recovery and work and things like that and toward equity? So what would that mean?
There's no ESSER funds in this round, that they've been spent, allocated. If we looked at doing that now, I mean, you're gonna be over in a line in the budget, and it's going to impact, I'd have to look closely at when you're teaching and when she's teaching. So there's a domino effect.
Of course, yeah.
And on which days you know, it'd be great to say, yeah, she takes 5, 6, but does that work in the schedule that we've set up? I don't know. And I will say that she is functioning as a sub on Wednesdays, and she is functioning as a part-time support staff on Monday to create a full-time position with another person. So that would be impactful in that realm, so. But I can certainly look at it and come back and let you know.
I don't know, between the last item we talked about with the skiing equity and this, I'm ready to hide under my desk of like, and have a little cry, because it seems like I'm feeling really stuck of like, we can't do anything toward any of these things. And it's just is like, what's baby steps to make me feel, I don't know, like, is there anything we can do to move any of this ahead? Because I think Jamie presented a very good case of like, this is a high need area. Like what can we do other than say, ooh, but next budget season? Because it just seems like that's an easy thing to say.
If you'd like,
I agree, Beth.
I can take a look at the schedules and see.
You look at it.
It's gonna take me a little headspace.
And I do realize this is the first day of school.
But
I'm already feeling very nervous about the next few days as I see the students that are eager and haven't been able to play for, and it's again, the ones that haven't been playing, they're telling me their reasons, and it is a complete equity issue. The ones that are coming to me right now, desperate to get back involved, and I have to say no.
That's right.
It's rough. It was a rough go at it today, and it's gonna be as like each day comes and I see a new class, I haven't seen it, because I only see them when they come to me because of COVID, so it's, having to tell them no is not easy.
I mean, that's an interesting question, just to like, do you need support for prioritizing differently? To say, kids who have been playing throughout the pandemic clearly had support and have advantages, and maybe they'll wait a little bit. And I mean, I would hate to have anybody, but if we have to prioritize, does that feel better? Does that, I don't know, none of it feels good.
I agree through the screen with them and promised them for better times, so there's no.
Right, I know.
And they worked hard, and a lot of them really wanted to stop along the way because they did not sign up to be studio musicians, and that's exactly what I made them be. And some of them were like, yeah, I want to be a studio musician, like, good for you. But like the majority of them, this is not what they signed up for. So telling them after I've made those through the screen promises for better times, and now we're here, and I walked into that 8th grade IDL today, and all my whole band was in there, and all their eyes lit up. They're like, "You're here!" And they're so excited to get started again. That it's, I don't think one is easier or harder than any at all. It's just rough.
And equity is not choosing. And equity is not having to make that
Right.
choice, because that's not a.
And then you've got the ones that have been playing for a year and a half, and they can't play alongside the ones who have. So I'm looking at this year needing more time than I typically have to truly provide an equitable experience for them, but I'm looking at having a lot less time. So that's my.
Not to mention the 4th and 5th graders that haven't even been introduced, right?
I just wanted to answer Beth's question, because, I mean, the part about, not really an answer, but a reply, the part about climbing under the table, I mean, that's, it's an awfully good point. And so what I'm reminding myself of, it's awkward to be here at a board meeting, tossing around ideas like how we actually might solve a problem. And so we're talking about we're really quickly getting into the minutia of students' lives and the hours of the day. And so as a board, we do have a budget, and we have that equity policy. And so I think we've laid on the table some really big pieces of the puzzle for the educators to work with. I don't know how much budget constraint there is currently. Ed outlined that for us at the last meeting, right? I mean, are we?
I had his report, yeah.
We-
Well, you ended up with,
Under,
Financials.
yeah, and we're under budget from last
Yeah,
year.
we ended up
That
with-
closed out from last year,
Right.
surplus, right?
A little,
But we don't use that this year.
right,
We don't get that
Right,
this
it's
year.
for the, yeah.
but it's just a little something for us to have in the back of our mind, I guess. I don't know, I to be a hard nose, I would say we have a policy and we have a budget, and it's not okay for students to come back to school and to have the situations that Jamie is saying are presented, and we're not ready, or we're not able to meet that.
So, I think this is awesome, Jamie. You presented some really good stuff. I know we have 3 people who are waiting to also talk to us. And I think that this is a really big discussion that we need to have and continue and
And I'll do a little digging on if Becca was full-time this year, if we decided to do that.
yeah, what that would look like.
yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Maybe not.
My fifth grader had music today and loved it. No, my third grader, sorry.
Got deeper,
Third grade
I feel like
music.
we got deeper into just the issue of equity in many ways than we almost ever have. in
I
these
agree.
discussions. Thank you, for that. I really appreciate that.
I think the
Thank you
last
for listening.
2 meetings.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank
We've
you.
gotten farther with equity than my entire time before.
Yeah.
In just
You don't
bringing
have to
things to
stay.
light.
You can go.
Yeah. Okay, Jamie.
You wanna
Give
go.
us a lesson on something.
Thanks, Jamie.
Well, Jamie.
Yeah.
Okay,
Jamie, you can go right down that stairway too. if you
Yeah.
want to.
Careful the bottom step.
But we didn't adjust the agenda at the beginning. I don't think it's on.
what is that?
That's right.
What's not on here?
What?
We're gonna talk about, drama, program outside and homework club. But it wasn't on the agenda, we were gonna
Okay.
add it to the agenda.
Okay, so
We didn't
drama.
do. I will
Okay.
quickly finish my report so you gentlemen can have your time. That's-
Yeah,
Yeah, because
Just
I don't
Andy?
have,
okay, so we're adding drama and, did you want Jamie for drama?
No, I know what she wants.
Okay.
We talked.
And, homework.
Homework club. So just quickly, building committee, Nikki and Sarah are part of the building committee. I just wanted to update. Jim has been working with us. He's going to, Efficiency Vermont has not released the grant yet. When they do, Jim's going to apply because we need 2 more AR handlers and 6 unit events. I have to read that. When the safety grant opens, he's going to apply for $7,500 and we will be using that for an alarm system as we were, had a theft.
over the
during August.
summer.
We were, yeah. And I can update you on that, Scott.
And
Yeah, I didn't know anything about that.
when
So you're
we,
here.
we'd also talked about, sprinkler, did Jim,
So he, and that would be part of that first Efficiency Vermont grant, I think he said, did he not say that? Or was that just help the safety one?
no, it was the safety one, I think, to talk about sprinkler.
Okay, let me touch base with him on that.
I mean, it may just be too big, it might be a
Yeah.
small safety grant.
But just so you know, he's contacted Banwell. They want to come and do just a preliminary walkthrough to kind of gauge what the layout is and to help us figure out what that would, site plan would cost. So just a preliminary, so he's gonna schedule that.
Then are we talking about a full site plan, or are we talking about a conceptual,
Yeah, just
Conceptual.
just a
Okay.
conceptual.
a conceptual, okay, cool.
And doing a walkthrough.
Doing a
of us
walkthrough,
and
yeah.
sort of-
Okay, last slide is just COVID update. As you know, you're probably familiar with all this stuff, all the health staff were trained in the new guidelines, they're very similar to last year's. COVID compact went out, we've got them, I think 1 we're still trying to get. Many staff.
That's not bad.
In addition to that one.
One.
here,
Oh, really?
Yeah, just, we're trying to reach a family.
So there's only 2 contracts that aren't in?
That's not bad.
Only one now. One's-
Holy
That's
moly,
amazing.
Yeah.
that's unreal.
Yeah.
Well done.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was a process.
Yeah, but still.
So we are encouraging outdoors as much as we can, but we do have some documentation in place for if we have to contact trace. Staff have been really good about that, and the bus drivers. And then we are saying, be ready to go remote if you need to, although there was some talk about, is that even allowed? So David, we should have. a
That's what I
conversation
was
about
trying
that,
to
yeah.
figure out. I was looking for that guidance from the
It's
AOE,
not at this point,
that it was not allowed.
it's not allowed.
If we couldn't do it for snow days, then
Right.
I do not believe we can deliver
But
remote
What I
instruction.
heard Friday in my principal meeting was that there's been a lot of pushback and
Right.
there is an expectation that that will change, so we should be prepared.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah,
That's
right.
not the case.
My nephew just did a week of remote school in Montpelier.
Yeah,
Like, all those schools up there had to go remote and they were all teaching.
We've been told to do it because we think the decision will
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
Because people.
Because people are not gonna
Otherwise,
extend,
you have those
you have to extend the year.
What won't be offered is remote only.
right, yeah.
Right.
It's a different
Correct.
animal.
Yeah, no, but we
These
need to continue to teach if we have to quarantine a class.
Yeah, well, I think
Makes
we'll-
sense, right?
Yeah, we'll have to do it.
But Montpelier is doing it, so.
They did, they did, yeah, my nephew went back today because he tested negative, but there were still kids who were out. And it was just the number, the math of that one outbreak was insane. How many kids ended up quarantining
It gets crazy.
Very
Based
closed
on-
today,
in 3 different
They're closed
schools and
tomorrow.
Barry is now.
Barry did?
closed.
very town.
And there's one in Brattleboro too, I thought.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, so,
Here we go
And
again.
we're only in
we're
day
gonna be
one.
ready.
Day one.
Anyway.
Yeah,
Right,
we'll,
that-
we'll be ready, and we will, if we have to go remote, we'll go remote. I mean, and
Do
then,
you feel like you're ready?
Yeah.
We'll be ready.
yeah, I think
We've
our
done it.
teachers are ready.
You think they know what they're doing now?
Yeah, they, I
Well,
mean, they
they'll
don't,
figure it out.
it's not the best, but they can do it.
Okay, well, I'm gonna move us on, thank you, Christine. I'm gonna move us on to the legislative update, because we have John Bartholomew and John Aronson, and David, if you can get us back to our owl, we have Elizabeth.
Elizabeth is here.
Elizabeth's here.
Elizabeth is here. Yes,
Yes.
she is.
That's,
We
and by
are,
the way, that's who I've been communicating with, just trying
all
to
right,
give her
we
an
are
update
back.
as to where
We
we
are
are.
back.
Okay, so, we asked, John and Elizabeth to come, to help us understand where the legislature was. And I think the idea here is that, this way we don't get curveballs. I think, board members for many years were feeling like, the legislature was just constantly throwing out hurdles for us to jump over. And we've gotten through this latest COVID hurdle, which was not the legislature, and we're still getting through it. But just to be a little bit on top of things that may be coming our way and to have maybe more influence in that than we might have if we didn't know it was coming. So I don't know who wants.
Yeah, we invited Elizabeth, John, and John. John Harrison is on the education committee. That was one of the reasons that he said I'd be willing to come, just because he's got that, you know, that knowledge about the education committee. But I don't know, I think too, there was some talk that John and Elizabeth both, and John Harrison wanted to talk a little about what's upcoming, what are the priorities in the state, what are the things we need to be on the lookout for. So I don't know whether, as being on the education committee, if you just want to give a quick sense of a couple of things that you ended up with, and
Sure.
go ahead, and then maybe we'll go to John and
I thought
Elizabeth.
it might be fair too, before we get started. Is there a time frame for this? We don't have that on our agenda.
Well, it is on the agenda. It's under my report, right?
No, but what would be the time frame?
Oh, I see.
7:30,
Yeah.
so we're looking at
I'd say,
legislative report for half an hour.
yeah, I'd say 15, well, I think 20 minutes maybe, yeah.
Minutes, okay.
You know, so if,
If I get carried away, just tell me.
we'll stop you, yeah.
Thank you. First of all, this is my first legislative session, so if I fumble at all, I'll refer to John. The Ed Committee had 34 bills submitted to us. We took up 11, and I'm going to highlight some of the ones that I feel are really important that will affect all the schools in our area. H101, which is the literacy bill, establishes a position within each SU to handle literacy with trained professionals. What the committee and what the bill tries to address is that it's screening the kids early for dyslexia and getting all kids to a competent reading level by 4th grade. The ultimate goal, nothing against the paras that every school has, but a lot of the paras may not be as good at teaching reading. And if you can't read by 4th grade, it kind of sets your path through the rest of your education. So anyway, that was the gist of 101. 106, I'm going to go really quickly. It's called the Community Schools Bill, and it was a pilot project that what it tries to do is utilize our buildings more efficiently. And what I mean by that is to encompass it around the community, as opposed to the schools over here, the town office is over here, the rec department's over here. There's a school down in Bennington, Molly Stark, that has an existing program. And it helps with the social and economic equity issues, with dentists actually come into the school, doctors actually come into the school, and they try to use their school 365 days a year as much as possible. A bill that I worked the most on, and it affects something that you folks just barely took up, was H426, and these all incidentally have been signed by the governor. That's a school assessment bill, and back in the heydays when the state was handing out 30% of construction costs. A lot of schools took advantage of that, and the state went in way over their head in debt. And so consequently, the school construction was shut off entirely. Finally, in 2016, the state was able to pay off the bonds on existing construction, and the program has been frozen ever since then. And the whole idea of 426 is to do an inventory of our schools, the assessment of our schools, and try to get a handle. Believe it or not, AOE couldn't even tell us definitively how many school buildings there are in the state. And we heard a lot of testimony from school districts that have tried repeatedly to get bonds passed, and they just can't get them passed. One that comes to mind is Mount Abraham that's had a leaky roof, and they finally just started putting line items in for the work. And the problem that's created because the program's been on hiatus for so long is that there's a tremendous backlog. And construction costs, as we all have heard, are going through the roof. One of the things that when the bill went over to the Senate, one thing that was added was requiring all school districts to test for radon by September of 2023. My guess is that that'll have to be extended because there's only a few companies doing it. It has to be done during the winter. And I saw something that you folks are looking at air handlers.
Mhm.
Is that because you didn't have proper ventilation from,
It is.
okay.
Yep.
You're not using ESSER money for that?
We did.
They
Okay.
did, yeah.
Yep, it's
They
the-
just have
it's
two
a
left to
complete
do.
project.
Okay.
It was a big project.
If your building is waiting to have that project done, the radon has to wait until it's completely done. And then it doesn't make any sense to do it now and then change the air ventilation system later. Once again, going back to the equity issue, social economic, S100 is going to institute a program of school breakfast, 100% for all students, paid for, so that it isn't a matter of who can afford it, who can't. One thing I didn't agree to on, but it's in there anyway, is that while you're eating, it's going to be considered classroom time. Same thing with the universal lunch. And built into that bill is also a requirement for local products. And I don't know what Heartland's doing. I know when I went to Weathersfield, they're trying to set a goal of 30% of local produce, and Weathersfield said they're way above that, so it's a good thing.
The same program for us.
Same program.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
For the instructional time for within schools, so I work a lot within school meals, and the idea is that the many times to get kids to eat their breakfast, it's a lot easier to go and have them like grab it from the cafeteria, head to the classroom, and do like morning meeting or just attendance and that kind of stuff, and while they're eating breakfast. And so if they did that and it wasn't counted as instructional time, then you'd have to add like 10 minutes onto the school day. And it gets really complicated just so you feed more kids. And so that's something Vermont passed several years ago to have that part of it, because it's happening now as well.
Okay. Currently taking place is a study committee that is looking into the weighting factors on students. That is going to be a significant impact on all schools in Vermont. There's going to be winners, there's going to be losers. The UVM study that was done 2 years ago and it's currently just in the paper form, identified that the current system of a good example of kids in poverty, which would be anybody that gets a subsidized lunch, which is up to $45,000, would be considered a kid in poverty, and they would be counted as 1.25 students. The UVM study, if it's fully implemented, takes that number up over 3. And for some communities, that's going to be a plus in their budget, and for some communities, it's going to be a negative in their budget. Another factor that was not figured in at all was how rural your community is. How many students are there per square mile within your community? And from watching the committee meetings, the goal is to implement it in phases. There's been some push in the legislature, especially from one gal, that feels that it should just be done over with, get it over with. But the impact is gonna be so significant on school budgets that if it's phased in slowly, I think it'll be a lot more palatable. My gut feeling is that we live in an area of the state that's gonna be on the negative end, but that remains to be seen until the formula is totally put together.
Can I ask one quick question about that? Because when you look at the projections, my question is which numbers, or how old are the poverty numbers that they're using? Because, for example, Heartland's demographics have really changed and shifted over the last 5 years, and some of the projections seem to be using the old numbers.
That's a good question, and I don't exactly have the answer. I know that the using the if you're eligible for subsidized meals, it is no longer being used. So somehow they're grabbing people's income level, and that's what's supposed to be used. I don't think that they can't be using census numbers because that wouldn't give you an accurate picture. So
Can I butt in here for just a second?
Please.
It's Elizabeth. That's one of the things that they are talking about in the task force on the implementation of the equalized pupil weighting study. And they've talked about it's possible to have a form that's sent out to all families that collects all kinds of different data points, including family income, and so that now that we have universal lunch, it's really hard to collect free and reduced lunch numbers. And so, and they've known to be, I think it was 67% inaccurate, or only 67% accuracy rate. And so they are looking at different ways they can go just by income levels, but they also need to take other things into account. So they're looking at other ways to account for it.
Thank you. I guess for me, it scares me if Heartland were to be registered by income level, because our income level as a community does not reflect our student population.
It wouldn't, well, it wouldn't be at community income level. It would be, you have access to those kinds of records for family member, like household income levels. And so one method of collecting that would be to access the household income level. Another one would be to send out a universal form. And I think as a school board chair, that would be really interesting because you could collect all kinds of data points and then, look at them year over year that aren't even related to, I mean, there are all kinds of demographic data points that you could collect. That would be interesting to think about.
They could also be going over direct certification rates. And so that's when a student is directly certified for free meals regardless. So that would be if they're automatically on, the family's on SNAP, WIC, classified as homeless, foster care, all those are like the direct certification list, and they don't need to do the free and reduced lunch stuff. So that's also a direct, way to be measuring that. That's an accessible data point.
But they actually spent a whole day discussing this already.
Right? Oh, I'm sure.
There will be many more.
Yeah. Okay, I want to keep us moving.
Okay. In the big bill, which is the one with all the zeros after it, the Senate put in a placeholder of millions of dollars for PCB testing. There's no criteria when it has to be done or how it's done or anything like that, but anybody that's followed the Burlington problem, I think you're going to see it coming down the pipe where PCB is going to be, it could conceivably be an issue in a lot of our schools. We certainly are not in a position to tear all half the schools in Vermont down.
What is it? PCB?
Polychloral butane.
A thing in the building?
It was used extensively as a mastic for elasticity. In other words, around windows, possibly on the floor, maybe behind chalkboards. And in Burlington, it migrated out to the point that they couldn't mitigate it adequately. It was getting into the air. An architect that we heard from, I kind of questioned him quite a bit about it. He said that generally it can be mitigated within the school without the extreme of Burlington. We've all heard the court case on religious, whether or not the schools are gonna have to pay, tuition to go to religious schools. I don't think that's gonna affect our schools significantly.
It's affecting us.
It is affecting.
We are in the court case.
Okay.
We got sued. We got
Very
sued.
very much affecting them.
Wow, I blew that one.
We are one of the schools.
And just a quickie on numbers, I was looking up what the tax rates were. Heartland is $1, and this is the homestead tax rate, is $1.73. Your CLA, you must have just had reappraisal, you're rated 100. West Windsor is at $1.38, Windsor's at $1.41, and if it was a sports game, Weathersfield would be the winner at $1.81. So.
But their CLA is incredibly low.
Well,
Well,
that's doing
Yeah.
that's figuring in the CLA.
Oh, that does figure in the CLA. Okay.
Yeah, and Weathersfield is really $1.90 something.
Okay.
And that's already figured in. I think with home values, what they're doing, I think the CLAs are gonna be all over the place within a year or two. The last one that I got is the bill that came over from the Senate. It was a catch-all bill with many different parts to it. There's several pages on library. Once again, a task force has been formed. There's a part of it is use of funds for education, which I don't think is a problem. Whether or not you cannot use you can't use school, municipal or municipal for school. So those two funds can't be intermingled. This may or may not affect Heartland. Menstrual products have to be available in all bathrooms or by the nurse's office, even in elementary school. The last one, and this is a favorite of this office, is implementation of the financial shared school system. It may not affect you folks directly, but it certainly affects the SU significantly. The system that the state bought for universal data collection, so the AOE, has not worked the way they wanted it to by any stretch of the imagination. And we got a report in June. They were supposed to have everything fixed. It's still not fixed. That's the high point.
as we enter our budget season.
So are they gonna keep moving forward with it?
We-
We don't know where that's going.
We do not know where that's going. Right
Okay.
now, it's implementation of it was supposed to be fully implemented in all SUs. I don't remember the date, but that's been totally put on hold. And one other point that is good news is that the excess spending threshold has been dropped for 2 years. So if you're over the state average, you're not gonna get doubled on it. So that,
And that is for this year, 21 to 22? Or is
and
that, and then 22 to 23, or is
it'd be
it?
the two
Right.
coming up,
Okay, so it'd be
Yeah.
22 to 23
Right.
and 23 to 24.
right?
Okay. Very helpful to us.
So I don't know, Elizabeth and John, if you want, or the things you've been working on, or anything that John Eric.
I've got a question for John Arison. Have you been following the pensions debate?
Not extensively, but that, the only thing I'll say is that due to investments in what the stock market's done, it's doing a little bit better, but it is still a hole that is very, very deep, without a tremendous solution to it. Maybe you're more up on it than I am.
I'm not. I haven't been. I've been following a lot of things, but I haven't been following that. And I know they've just had their third meeting out of 6, and they're supposed to make their recommendations in December. So they're going to be doing I think still taking testimony, and then they're going to be doing the hard work of coming up with a proposal here in the next couple of months.
There's got to be some changes in the system, or it isn't sustainable as it is. But we just got a report from the Joint Fiscal Office that all the state revenue sources are doing quite well comparatively. The ed funds, which comes in from several different directions, other than property tax, it is above projections, and the general fund is above projections. So that's good news. As long as the legislature doesn't go spend it all.
The part of that, John, is that they just added, or I think you probably know this, that they just added this past year. What was it called? The Wayfair lawsuit made it possible for Vermont to collect sales tax on internet sales, which they hadn't been able to do before. And while last year, Mark Perot was really dire in his projections about where we were going to. Was it last year? Yeah, in 2020. He was very dire in his projections about where we're going to end up. But Wayfair case actually brought the sales tax revenue up threefold from what it had been before because of the pandemic. So
Everybody's shopping online.
Yeah.
But even on top of that, I mean, the rooms and meals tax is doing better than projections. The purchase and use tax, which is what you pay on your car, is well, maybe it's not doing so well now because there's nothing to buy. But it's still, many of the funds are definitely above projections.
John, is there anything?
John, did you have anything like your committee is working on, or things that you see in the future that?
First of all, I'm very pleased Representative Harrison was able to be here, because having someone who's actually in education committee is
Yeah.
really great, particularly the way we've been functioning, where it's much more difficult to know what other committees are doing than in other years. And also I want to call her my new district mate, although she's got a whole session behind her now. Representative Burrows obviously has a lot of experience with school board matters. So, I'm really pleased to have her as a district mate. One of the things I want to make sure that you keep in mind is, as you hear about things that come up, we're not in session now. We probably won't be again until January. So we're not causing any mischief. But as things come up, don't hesitate to let me or Elizabeth know. And Dr. Baker knows if an amendment comes to the floor, there's an education bill that comes up, I don't hesitate to call him and say, what is this going to do to us? But if you know of an issue, let us know. And the other thing, we're in the second year of the biennium, so our bill submission deadline, it actually happens before the session starts. So if you know anything we need to introduce to help our supervisory union or our school districts, let us know, because we've got to get the drafting request in before it's sometime in December. I don't remember exactly when. I've been on the Agriculture and Forestry Committee. Most of the time I've been in the legislature, and then this last year I switched over to transportation, so I've had a huge learning curve. And one of the really, it's been such a bizarre session this last year. Obviously, just like with trying to educate kids, trying to legislate remotely just does not work as well. It's been extraordinarily challenging. And put that on top of the fact that normally when we're dealing with appropriations, which is a huge part of what we have to do, we're trying to figure out where we're going to get the next $100. This year, we're trying to figure out where are we going to spend these millions of extra dollars that came in the most efficient, make sure we use it, and make sure that we are the most efficient in our use of it. So infrastructure, transportation has been a big issue there. And another, from the education perspective, trying to build out the internet access across the state, talking about equity, that is huge. So those are two big ones that come to mind. But mostly because I'm not in the education committee and no expert on education, I came here because I want to hear if there are issues you want us to be thinking about as we go into the session when it starts. So I think, I'm sure Elizabeth has something to add.
I've got a couple of things. I was going to add on to you, John, about the American Rescue Plan Act funds that are coming into our state. we actually have a listening session coming up for Windsor County on Sunday afternoon. I put notice on it on the Heartland listserv about it, but it's this Sunday afternoon if you have a chance to stop by, because they're really trying to get a lot of opinions from across the state about how we should prioritize that statewide spending. Besides what John Arison talked about, I spoke this morning with Amanda Garces, who is leading the Act 1 implementation. And she said that she has 70 practitioners working with her on EQS. Oh, look at that. An EQS development. And that they are working as readers. Some are working as readers of educational quality standards, and some are working as writers. And she said that that working group is going to be voting on what the standards will be at their October meeting. So that implementation is going to start going really quickly, because prior to now, they had not had adequate funding. And they also were supposed to be working in conjunction with the Agency of Education, which of course was mired in COVID last year. So their deadline for full implementation is the end of the next session, I believe. So they've got to get it done pretty darn quick here. I was on healthcare this session, and I can't really think of how that applies to education, or how I guess one thing that we did pass was we got a Dr. Dinosaur like provision passed for non-US citizens who don't have access to Dr. Dinosaur and don't have access to Medicaid, who are pregnant or who have children under the age of 1 year of age, at which point Medicaid picks up a lot of their coverage. So it covers their pregnancy and very early childhood and postpartum. And I plan to go and give testimony tomorrow at the task force on the implementation of the equalized pupil weighting study. And here are the things that I was going to talk about. I plan to testify about tuition caps, how the allowable tuition rate is decided, the excess spending threshold, of course, the bill backs, and how special education fees, I call it the cover charge, special education cover charge, and transportation. I think the small schools grant is in effect completely sunsetted. But if you have anything that you would like me to bring up, please let me know sometime tonight, because I'm writing my testimony this evening to submit it early tomorrow morning, and then to present it on site tomorrow afternoon. And so I think that's about it for me. Thank you.
Really good. So thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I got a preview of it earlier and I was like, I can't add to this. So.
Yeah, the only thing I can say for all of you is, for me personally, is the universal school meals bill. However, we can push that forward and elevate it and pass that. I mean, Maine passed universal school meals before us. How could that be? I totally think Vermont, we can't take this away from students at the end of this school year.
Yeah,
we can do that.
I agree with that.
Breakfast is already passed, or
Yes.
Breakfast is
so
already done.
it's lunch universal.
Yeah, breakfast passed, and the buying local incentive bill passed, and so that means like Craig
Right.
will get a higher reimbursement rate for the more local he buys.
That's great.
So
So
we
that'll
should,
help buffer the cost for buying more local food.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, but let's do lunch too.
He's been buying local. Our meals are
Already.
already good.
Already, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, just so you know too, he's going to be participating in, we'll be having a kind of for farm to school month, getting signs out to all the local farms that are supplying our schools. And so they'll have like lawn signs that says like, this farm feeds our kids, and things and stuff. So we'll have several in our community, which is really exciting.
yeah.
cool.
Okay, one thing that I heard that rings a bell for me is, the dyslexia,
Yeah, the literacy bill.
Yeah,
screening, which is just, I think, really missing in the school system and would really help a lot of kids.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Does that come with?
If it works like it's designed, it's gonna be huge.
It's too expensive. for-
It's gonna take several years to start to see the effects. But I think like in 5 or 6 years, you should see a group of kids coming through that have been screened properly and taught to read properly. Especially the dyslexia, before they even enter school, they'll pick that up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we have a lot of our teachers trained in different methodologies. We've been doing that over the last couple of years. It's just, again, finding the resources and having the state focus. So I think that'll help us out.
and I'll admit, I was a little nervous about what the literacy bill was, because I didn't want to have this huge focus on literacy at the
Yeah,
expense
another
of
curriculum or something.
another curriculum, yeah, but to hear that it's early screening and,
Yeah.
getting kids reading by fourth grade is a good goal.
And
First grade is
the ultimate
absurd.
goal is to get as many kids off of IEPs as we can.
Yes.
Yeah. Or
They're
have them,
that's
or have the revenue.
Does funding come along with that?
Yeah,
I think there was some seed money,
The-
as I recall.
You're right. The AOE has to put in a full-time position to implement the bill. And I'd rather get back to you than on the funding
On the
part of
money.
it.
That's, in terms of budgeting, that's.
You're not required to do it at your, the SU,
Right, it's in the,
because of Act 46, the SUs are going to be given more and more responsibilities. So I think you're going to see it
curriculum.
funnel through this office.
but that's still us.
It's still money.
it's still your
We
money.
still pay
It's
for
a good
it.
thing, but if we're paying for it, we need to know
Right,
so we can budget for it.
Right.
And.
Yeah.
That's,
But as with so many things, the talent pool for the positions that we're trying to create may not exist. So and we're not the only people looking for these positions and trying to spend ESSER and ARPA money and all that stuff. I mean, it's really a tough market right now for employees. I'm sure you folks are well aware.
Oh, we're well aware.
well aware.
Yeah. The only last thing I'll say, and then we can move on, but just to piggyback on what John said earlier, all three, Elizabeth, John Harrison, and John Bartholomew, are very responsive. I mean, if any of us need anything, I mean, I know that all three of them have my cell phone on speed dial, especially Elizabeth has my cell phone on speed dial. But also the reverse is true. If something comes up and we need something, or we hear this testimony, we get right to them and they get right back to us. So I think that's what's nice about living in a state like this, in a small rural state, that people pay attention to each other and really care about what they're doing. So that's been very helpful.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was
Thanks for
really,
coming out on
that
short
was really
notice.
helpful, and thank you for staying as long as you did. Sorry, we were so late. That was
Well,
a-
both Johns are glad
That
they
was a-
checked in today, because they would have been sitting out at Heartland,
Yeah, right.
waiting for the meeting to
Like
start.
I was.
Yeah, who are you waiting for? Oh, come on.
Your message said everything except where you were meeting.
Yeah, there you go.
Maybe-
Oh, well.
maybe I'll-
Small oversight, but yeah, next time ask.
I know,
Yeah.
especially since we threw a curveball on this one.
Thanks
But
for
this
coming.
owl is nice.
Appreciate it. Yeah, we're
Thank
trying
you.
out the owl technology.
That's
so.
why we're here, is to see how this works.
For German, I'll wait.
Right. Bye for now.
Thank
Elizabeth,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
Elizabeth.
Nice meeting you all.
Elizabeth's got some writing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming, John.
David.
Yeah, and the only other two things under my report that, first of all, the budget preliminary review, I think that might have been referring more to the SU, because I know Christina's
I'm
not,
not there yet.
she is not there, but I will tell you that Colleen and Rebecca, and I don't know if you got that email today, I reached out to Rebecca, Colleen, and Jamie, who are SU reps, and we are getting ready. Again, poor Ed he tested positive for COVID about 3 weeks ago. Yeah, and so he really didn't feel that good. So he was laid up for a while. So we're once again, it's off to a little bit of a slower start than we wanted, I know. But I think Ed told me the other day he's got everything right now that he needs, and we'll put that SU budget together, and then the three committee members will take a look at that. And then we can bring that back. And I think John's right, and more things are getting done at the SU, so that SU budget continues to climb. And I think that's never fun at town meeting, but I think the nice thing about it is that it's we've got to start thinking about that as the SU, sort of spelled backwards. SU is us, right? The SU is us. It's not some entity, but as you said, Nick, you're right, with the money that comes in. It's all of yours, so I think that's important. Right? And the last thing on here is and we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but the Valenti French, there's a policy, unless you had more to say about this, Nikki, there's a policy being recommended by the Vermont School Boards Association with respect to tuition. We're taking that now and putting it in our format. We'll bring that to the SU, right, because we've been doing our policies at the SU, and then we all adopt it there. But essentially, it is going to allow, the policy will allow at least, pending any court action for payment to any school that's approved by, including a religious school, as long as there's a caveat in the policy that'll simply say, as long as that, I think it says, I just sent you all a copy of it, and I think, Nikki, you had sent me the link on the AOE website, but payment of tuition is made subject to condition that the approved independent school cannot expend funds for religious worship. So, what they're going to have to do is sign some sort of a disclaimer or a waiver. The school will, not the parent.
And we're gonna have to write that.
And we have to write that up. But apparently that's there's sort of a template that's coming around for all of us to use, and that's good. But right now, the advice of the attorney has been, given the, state of the court actions to date, that we will pay, but it'll be subject to language similar to what's in that policy. So, and it's also, we send a letter along with that payment to the school that says this does not condition future payments, that will take, so that, it's a lot of legalese, and luckily Bill has helped us a lot. Our attorney, he's representing all three districts, but he's turned into representing the whole state in this matter of tuition to religious schools. So
What's the process for getting approval, David?
so it's pretty much this, for the school to get approval from the state. Yeah, there's a whole process they have to go through for that to happen.
We'll be
Yeah,
getting requests from schools that haven't.
No, I'm just trying to mentally prepare.
no, it's true.
So it hasn't happened yet.
It hasn't happened yet. And by the way, the independently approved schools are they're in that Vermont directory, so you can see them. And by the way, they are conditioned on, I think there's something I'd have to look at. I don't want to say something that's not true, but it talks about proximate and bordering states, and it's not like you're not obligated to send the full tuition to, say, a school in Minnesota or a religious school in Utah. So there are some limits on it, and most of the time with those schools, it's the state average anyhow. It's not what they're charging. So quite frankly, it ends up being less than, like a Hanover or any of our high schools, really. I think the state average now is in the 15 to 16 range. And most of our schools now most of the high schools are charging, in that 19 to 20 range. So that's kind of where we are. And that's really all I've got tonight. Other than the fact that I did get around today too, and it's just always fun. I mean, And Christine had pictures of it, I wish I did, but of these little tigers coming in with their masks on, and they're so compliant and they're so good. I mean, every now and then you get a little bit of a, but in some ways it's like, it's bittersweet, you know, because it's really fun to see them comply. But I think we were so hopeful that we wouldn't be back like this. But, you know, the data is just still driving us to do this. But, you know, the staff's been cooperative, the students are cooperative, the families are cooperative. I mean, I listen to the horror stories and war stories around the state and around New England and around the country. And we just don't get that kind of behavior. And people just want to keep our community safe. And somebody said to me, you know, that's why Vermont is where they are in terms of transmission rates. And, you know, they're pretty compliant and pretty community minded. So I think that's when we have a few transportation glitches. I don't think any of them affect you.
No, we're smooth.
I think you were smooth sailing. It's a little bit, we've got a couple of them in Weathersfield and a couple of them in Mount Scottney, but we'll work them out. They're first day glitches that always happen. And, you know, people move, stops aren't where they used to be. And so we'll figure it out. But other than that, as I walked around today, it looked like a great start, you know. And cheers to Brian, first day on the job at Weathersfield, and it seemed like the parents really enjoyed him, and yeah, and of course he can't believe. I mean, he was in a K-8 school with 1,000 kids, so he looks at that and
He's got all their names down today.
oh God, I said, I can't believe this, and he sees all the resources and the help, and you know, Katie's provided some good support staff out there for Katie Ahern, who's on line here, but he said sometimes I can't believe it. You know, you have this one little kid that blows up, and there's like 3 people that are ready to really work with him and get him back to class. And yeah, so again, it's just great to live in a state like this that supports education and our communities in particular that do that. So yeah.
David, regarding the that tuition question or the discussion and the information that you sent us, it did say motion on the agenda. Is there something?
No, well, Nikki and I,
Handle it as
yeah, we had debated whether we would make the motion to adopt something like this. Was that what that motion was about?
I think,
And then we said, let's push it to the SU.
well, no, yeah, because there's that motion there is a proposed motion that we could adopt, but we decided to adopt the VSBA. So I think that email is entitled motion, so you probably just put the motion.
Maybe that's why that
I
fitted
think
me.
that's why it says that.
Maybe that's why it fitted me, because we have
The
two.
SBA is brand new the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that came out last week.
A new opportunity for.
Yeah, so there's a motion that you could make now that would do that, or we can adopt a policy that would do that.
It sort of does the same thing,
Yeah,
yeah.
I would prefer to go the policy.
And because we have 2 schools that tuition high school students, then
I get it now.
Yeah, so
better to
David
have
and I were
policy.
going back and forth
Yeah.
on whether or not to adopt a policy in Heartland and Weathersfield individually, or do it at the SU level. And it sounds like if it's okay at the SU level, we're gonna.
Yeah. that's what we'll do.
David, how has the vaccine mandate been received by our staff?
Yeah, Nikki was asking that earlier. First of all, it's good because as we're collecting the data on the staff that have been vaccinated, I mean, the good news is that it's a large percentage of staff that were already vaccinated. In general, we've had some pushback, but it's been minimal. You know, I mean, it's and we do allow for the medical exemptions and the religious exemptions, and we've got probably a half a dozen of those sitting on our HR desk right now, and we're using our legal counsel to help us respond to those, so we don't set up a precedent or do something wrong around discrimination. So we're being really careful with those. But there are people who are begrudgingly complying, you know, and to some degree, and some who were thinking about it and now are ready to do it. So I think sometimes it just sparks that sense. But to be completely transparent, there are some people that really don't like it, that think that we're overstepping or overreaching when we did that. There are probably right now, there are probably at least a half a dozen supervised unions of districts around the state now that have done the same thing. As a matter of fact, my letter that I sent to staff was a template letter. I think Montpelier has done. I think we use their template. I changed it up some, but Yeah, so I mean, I think that's the way it is. We gave enough of a window of time. I think people feel, you know, that 2 months, 60 days should be enough, you know, to have that happen. And, yeah, it could have been a lot worse, but I think people know why we're doing it and why the board did it. And you know, I haven't gotten any, no one's quit, no one's left their job, you know, and I hope that doesn't happen. You
Yeah, I know. Knock on wood.
We don't want to lose anybody over this, so.
Right, yeah.
I wanted to share with folks at home, what we had done a week ago, Monday night. But I couldn't find the minutes up on the SU site yet.
Well, they might not be up
It
yet.
made me think, when do the draft minutes go up on the?
They're supposed to be up within 5 days, but
We need those up.
and I don't know whether or not, have we been 5 days? When did the SU board meet?
A week ago.
Last Monday.
Monday.
Yeah,
So
okay,
it's
yeah,
8 days
so we're there now. Yeah. Yeah. We will work on
And
that.
then another question was my ears kind of perked up when Jamie said that Ellis Music was going to could grant the school, you know, a sales tax exemption. So what do schools regularly?
I was gonna say,
Well,
it
'cause it's
didn't,
the parents that are paying.
the parents pay now, so
I'm
they,
paying a sales tax on it.
and you're probably paying sales,
But if the school rents the instrument, they won't.
they won't pay.
Right, yeah, so if the
It's not,
school,
they're not granting it, it
They're
just
not-
happens, right?
Yeah,
so they're not doing anything for us by
No.
saying that.
Right, correct.
no,
It's a big
They're just-
nothing burger,
yes.
because we would not
Yeah,
pay sales.
it's pretty much a nothing.
Yes.
I looked at that and
There's
said,
not a break.
isn't that so
Right.
kind of Alice not to charge us tax? Yeah,
It's cheaper than the parents.
you did pick that up.
Okay, any other questions for David? Okay, so I already checked off our equity topic of discussion, building committee.
Christine
Give a good update.
Okay, so we're good on that one. Okay, I liked that. Drama.
So the question came up from Jamie if drama club could be held. You know, the initial was, it's normally an indoor school activity run by school staff. So the thinking was we said no to all of that for the time being. But she brought up, could it be outside, which we're doing with our 7-8 athletics, they're mixing outside. And so I said, well, let's take it to the board, or Sarah said that, or somebody, one of us. Which
Could you
then,
speak up just a little, Christine? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
sorry, also backed up because my computer's about to die. The question was, can we offer drama club outside? And it's normally mixed grades. I think it's normally 5-8, which is a lot. So I think she would tailor it to 7-8 or maybe two separate.
Choose 5, 6, 7,
5, 6, and a 7-8, so they don't mix. And could it be done outside? So it is school sponsored. Our athletics are school sponsored. I think the difference being we're not staffing those. We're not staffing athletics. It's coming from the rec program. It is run through the rec program, which have a different set of rules that they live by. So I am happy to be able to offer our children some after-school outdoor safe activities if the board agrees. What came to mind with that is can we offer homework club outside as well. We only have one beloved Ray to run it, so I don't know if we would just limit it. I think what I've heard the most from is 7-8, because up through grade 6, they can go to the rec after school. There's really no place for our 7-8s to go between school and practice. We did work, John worked hard. We got the soccer practices moved up a little bit, so instead of 4:30 to 4 o'clock, but it's still 2:30 to 4. Kids are needing some
Come
place
back
to
or
go,
what,
or get home, or so Ray I asked her today, she'd be willing to be outside undercover with those 7th and 8th graders, if the board wants to allow that, or grant that.
You know, and we really do feel like to be consistent, we've kind of left the before school and after school activity pieces to the local districts, as long as people can follow protocol. They agree to all of our COVID, handbook and regulations. They're in tune with the compact. So You know, if you've got people willing to do it, you know, we've done
Got
it
Ray.
before. And you got Ray.
Got Ray and Jamie.
For fall, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
And to me, it's kind of a no-brainer, but what about winter?
Yeah,
That's when it gets
doesn't
tricky.
happen.
It doesn't happen.
So we approve it for the fall.
And if it's pouring rain, just like sports, it's canceled that
It's
day.
canceled.
Right.
Yeah.
So if sports are canceled, homework club is canceled.
And drama club,
Sports canceled, drama club. Yep.
it's weather dependent.
Yep.
Very
Yep.
much.
Yeah, it's weather dependent, yeah, so you'd have to make that communication
Yeah.
Weather dependent.
really
I mean, I
clear.
can picture some pretty gnarly practices though, that I would not be wanting to host homework club.
So maybe they make the call.
We can make the call. If it's
Yeah.
bad weather, we're not gonna have kids sitting outside.
Yeah.
doing homework.
Okay.
And obviously, this is all dependent upon what is going on in the schools, and if you both
Right.
feel it's safe. I mean, I think, you know, at any point, you may just say, you know what, our cases are rising.
It's not gonna work.
We're keeping kids in school, but we're gonna start peeling things away to keep kids
Yeah.
safe. And I think that's fine. I think it's the, you know, I think it's the
We're gonna try
we're gonna
this.
try this.
We're gonna try
We
it.
wanna
Yeah.
make a good faith effort, and
I would say if they're outside, I mean, right now, they don't necessarily have to be masked outside. That's what the protocol says. But they're not mixing grade levels.
yes.
So if I have to quarantine a class, if they've been outside at recess together unmasked, and I can't guarantee they haven't been 6 feet apart the entire time,
You're
They
gonna
all
have
have
to
to
anyhow.
They should be
You're gonna have
masked. So
to
they should
anyhow.
be masked,
they should be masked
Yeah.
outside.
and it sounded like that was part of the,
You mean for the after-school
Drama club.
activities? Yeah.
Drama and homework.
and homework.
Because
they
they're
have to be
mixing,
masked.
yeah.
So they have to be 6 feet or
If they're mixed, you'd wanna mask them. That's a good point.
Well, do I want to mask them whether they're distanced or not, or just say?
Well, I'm just
mask
picturing like if we want, like if one person is doing something,
far away.
performing
Yeah, that's
with a
different.
mask on, you could let them take their mask
Yeah.
off if they're distant, like some flexibility.
Yeah,
But in general, everybody's masked.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds
And-
great to me.
Yeah,
And
and I think, I think you might wanna limit it to, because you've got the rec for,
Yeah,
Okay,
just
six.
Yeah,
that.
just
right?
7-8.
so just limit it to 7, 8. You know, that's the problem, yeah.
Just 7-8.
And that's why Weathersfield is doing us.
Are you saying limiting both drama and the homework club to 7, 8?
I'm saying limit homework club to 7-8, and drama club would have 2 separate
Spaces.
groups, 5, 6, and
Great, yeah, no, I was just thinking it would be a shame to limit it because
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
students that would want to go there just for enrichment.
And maybe to make it very clear that it really is up to the conditions in the school and,
Yep.
And the administration reserves the right to,
exactly, to call it off
Cancel,
at any
yeah.
point.
at any point.
And behavior, I mean,
Yes.
unfortunately, I think we have to be a little more.
Yeah, cognizant of that, yeah.
You know, if because it's just Ray, if there are behavior issues, sorry,
Yeah.
we don't have the resources
Okay.
to.
we will not be able to attend.
Right, it's just, this is for, unfortunately, it's for kids who can kind of sit and do their homework and
Mhm.
be, you know.
So
So
that's great.
thinking ahead to winter, particularly for the 7-8 crowd, they're all able to get vaccinated.
That's correct.
And that's the only population in our school that is all
7-8, yeah.
able to be vaccinated.
Yep.
Could we, are there, in Heartland, we haven't talked about this because we don't have
Mhm.
much of a distinction there, but are there different rules that the SU has created for high school, like vaccinated crowds? Could we look at something in the winter where vaccinated students could participate in homework club
Yeah.
indoors?
I mean, we haven't yet, but we've talked about it. We haven't made it part of our protocol and practice because we're still collecting the high school data right now just to see who is and who isn't. But I could very easily see, and this is even when we get to that 85% mark, that a lot of the privileges that might open up at that point are only for the vaccinated. I mean, I could see that.
Yeah.
I mean, we just have to figure that out. And maybe this, when we get to winter sports,
Mhm.
I could see that even with, you know, the high school basketball teams and high school.
Yeah.
Once we move inside, right, it's a
Right.
whole different level
Yeah.
of, you know,
Has
so.
anybody else done that or been around the state or?
Not yet, I don't think yet, because I don't think people have gotten
Middle
there
of
yet.
Delta still.
Yeah, yeah.
Picture a world post Delta.
Yeah. Plus,
Yeah.
we're outside pretty much.
Right.
All sports are outside in the fall. But I think you're gonna see in the next within the next month, that's gonna start to happen. And I bet the VPA will give some guidelines on that.
Yeah, I'm sure they will.
That
So I
would be
guess
my
I'd-
guess.
Maybe rethink it.
But I like that
Comes along.
idea, yeah.
But
Revisit winter.
Yeah, revisit winter, but I would like to see a way where we could, because I do think a lot of our 7-8s are vaccinated.
It's probably true.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
And they're turning,
Yeah,
we're collecting that data, and the nurses say that parents are very willingly, turning in their vaccination cards, making copies,
Where's that data going, David? Are you getting it? Is Tina getting it? I
Eventually, right, I mean, we haven't
collected it.
collected it yet, but yeah, Tina will get it
Okay.
in HR, because that's where we'll note it mostly.
So you haven't.
For
counted up
employees,
the
but for
7 days.
students, I think it'll just stay with the nurses. Like, I don't know who has the MMR or the, so I think the nurses, I mean, we'll be able to get it from the nurses,
We'll need to get it.
Yeah. But that doesn't have to come obviously to the central office.
sorry, this is random, but slightly related. Are we gonna do flu clinics for kids this year?
Flu clinics or COVID clinics? You mean,
Flu. Last
Flu
year we
shot?
did
Oh,
drive-by
yeah.
flu shots, which I think was brilliant.
yeah, I think we'll do that again. Mount Scottney is always wanting to help us with
I
that.
feel like
And the Vermont Department of Health, yeah.
if I'm having that wonder, maybe other people are having that wonder, and we should.
Yeah, I mean,
Tell
and
people.
apparently it's really important this year because
Yeah.
then it kind of weeds out, so, nurses
Flu
have a
from,
better sense of
right.
what's COVID and what's not, and it kind of boosts your immune system a little bit.
Right.
So I'll email Annette right now. How's that?
That's a good idea, and tell
Yeah.
her that, you know what,
Clinics, I'll see
ask
you
her to reach
more.
out to the other nurses too,
Okay.
because we're meeting weekly now, so that's,
Okay.
we're back to meeting weekly, so.
Yeah, you might want to think about timing on it, because
Yes, good point.
of boosters and
Now, that's the tricky part, but,
flu shot helps, is better to take later, because it extends you into the spring.
That's right.
I just learned this, but
Yeah.
it doesn't last the whole season, so the later you take it.
yeah, it sort of wears off a little bit, right?
And you can't get COVID for like a COVID booster for like a month after a flu shot.
You
So that's a
don't want it
really good point that
to
you
land on
wouldn't
the
want.
Well, I don't care about
People-
boosters. I want the kids to get vaccinated.
Right.
So maybe we do it earlier, even though we would.
Yeah,
Right, that booster shot.
So that if the vaccine's available in November, our kids can actually get vaccinated and not be waiting around because of their stupid flu shot.
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Mount Scottney might have
Saying the
some more information. I mean, unfortunately, there's just not a lot of data on the boosters.
not
and
yet, no.
Nobody really is willing to kind of,
Make a statement,
yeah, and so it's very confusing.
which is why I'm glad we left the
Yeah,
boosters
I mean,
out of our
Only
mandatory,
Pfizer's
we didn't mention
study
boosters.
for-
Yeah.
We're not there
And
yet.
that-
No, I
That
don't
is a
think-
concern with some of the educators and having J&J.
Right.
It's a
There's
tricky
no-
thing. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But it looks like only Pfizer is gonna have a booster that will be approved.
Right now.
Right now.
Yeah, so we'll work on that. The nurses are great, and they have contacts that we don't have, and they somehow pull these things off, so we'll just bring that up.
Yeah, I just feel like, if they give you a good, like, whatever the response is, let parents know ASAP, like, not a date, just saying
Yeah.
that we are planning on doing flu clinics again. Because I think this is the time that people start to make
But it's a good
appointments.
point, it's time to start thinking about a flu shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to get it, but to think about
No, think about it, get ready.
Yeah.
Because I would imagine what Colleen said is correct. I mean, you're right, you said that the lady, sometimes to wait a little while, because then it carries you into that late winter.
I think there's
Yeah.
different schools of thought, and something that people should consult their doctors.
Yeah, let the medical people figure it
That's
out.
really what I was saying, just
Yeah.
ask your nurses.
Please
what-
consult your physician
Yeah.
on anything we've said tonight.
I was-
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I was asking some of these
You're not
questions,
doctors.
it's just on the tip of my tongue, because I was down at Rite Aid asking exactly these questions, and they were like, yeah, we got it, you want
Oh, there you go. You
it? So it's commercially
Yeah.
available.
Right.
talking about the flu shot, Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and flu was going around this summer because
Yeah.
I guess it,
Wow, that
Got
makes sense,
anxious,
right?
but it
Yeah.
didn't want to wait because it didn't get to do anything last
Yeah.
year. I don't know.
Oh, my God.
Sorry. improvising flu. Okay, moving on. I think we're on items for action, if we're done with items for discussion.
I forgot, but I had a parent ask me about the math in Windsor for Heartland kids. And the parent wished that we had done an online version versus this transportation.
Say that again, no, the what? The,
For the advanced.
oh, the algebra students? Yeah,
I
that,
just wanted to ask about it.
Well, first of all, the AOE said we could not offer remote classes.
Okay.
So that was part of it.
That
But
sort of
also,
answers
we
that.
believe that the best instruction is in-person instruction, and part of that experience is being exposed to the high school experience for algebra.
Yep.
So,
we talked a lot about it, I know.
that is what we decided to pursue this year. So
And what's the schedule for them?
it's first
First
period.
Yep.
And so students can bus or be dropped off at the high school, and then they take the class, and then they're bused back to their respective schools.
Is the bus before school or?
It is. They pick up the high school bus at, there's 3 locations around 7 a.m.
Oh, okay.
So then they can get dropped off. Yep.
Very pretty.
And then they take a bus back to Heartland.
Yeah.
In time for second period.
And I don't remember how we talked about this before, but are we considering trying to figure out a way for the kids to not have to go anywhere, that they could take it at Heartland?
We can't do that because we can't offer a high school credit to do that.
That was the problem, right? That when you
So
take,
that was the benefit.
yeah, because we used to offer, in the old days, there was an algebra class at Weathersfield, an algebra class at, but if those kids were successful, the high school did not have to accept that as a transcripted credit. So one of the advantages, I think, to having it done at Windsor is every single student who takes it gets a Windsor High School transcript with that credit on it. So there's no way a high school could deny that when you bring, they have to accept that credit. So that's why we kind of went that way, not to mention capacity, right? Because it's tough to block out a period for, because algebra is not one you can sort of put 3 kids in the corner of a room and
Yeah.
while you got the rest of the class, so it's, yeah.
I
So
think it gives us algebra, I'm sorry.
I get any of it, I just want.
Right, I know, yeah.
I think this gives kids the opportunity to have a true algebra class. Except back in the day at Heartland anyway, when I taught the algebra class there, I had a complete algebra class. Everybody in the classroom did algebra. But we had a lot more students then, and it was very hard. It had implications on the schedule. For years, Heartland hired a algebra teacher, and then those students were pulled from their math class to be in an algebra section.
Yeah.
So it was a much smaller group of kids that, so then essentially you were tracking math. And so it created some issues because then it was back to back with science. And so then you had those students. I think this way does, there's a trade-off on the other side with students missing part of, well, there's no advisory this more in first period, right, anymore?
There is before first period.
Okay, so they miss advisory, but I think the benefit they get from being in a classroom with other kids, and we go through that process of selecting the kids, making sure that they're actually ready for the course, which is very important because developmentally, not all 8th graders, even if they have the math capability, are ready for algebra. So, or the demands of it.
And actually, Christine, I don't know how you felt, but believe it or not, that was the one that had me worried the most this year with the transportation, because we didn't do it last year. We did do it remote. And I think it was one of the things that worked pretty slick. I was at Windsor this morning and I watched those algebra kids arrive. We have a new teacher teaching it this year. So it seemed, I don't know whether you got any glitches, but I didn't see any. And so that was good. But I did, but what's that?
Are they every day?
They are.
Every day, 5 days a week. And they got back, I was at Heartland when they came back and they got back pretty much right on time, which was that never ceases to amaze me either.
It's not
But
a hard
Colleen-
drive. It's
Not a hard drive.
No, it's not a hard drive, it's 5 to 7 minutes, but Colleen, just so you know, and we've had, you're not the, I'm
Lots
sure
of
if parents are
conversation.
coming to you, they'd come to us too, so just know we've had, and we usually give them the same, the same response that, first of all, A, we were not able to offer remote classes this year, because AOE would not approve them, and B, we think that experience is good for the kids, and they have to follow the protocols, and the truth is, they're in with 9th and 10th graders who are probably, some of them with 9th grade, or is it all 8th grade? I think there might be
There
some
may
9th.
be some ninth graders in there,
Which
but
are,
I
you
think
know,
most of it's eighth graders.
You'd like to
Eighth
think they're
graders from
vaccinated,
Windsor
yeah.
and
Wendy just said she saw those smiling faces.
Awesome.
Awesome.
That's good.
My only concern, and I had a kid who had his first day of algebra today, and he seemed to really enjoy it, and said the teacher was so nice, and
Oh,
it
good.
seemed to go really smoothly. My only question was around, I have a little bit of nervousness about mixing so many
Right,
different
kids,
schools
right.
and different kids, and, if there's an 8th grade COVID case at Heartland, and then those kids, maybe then some Mount kids and some Weathersfield kids have been exposed, and, very quickly, you might be in a situation where the Heartland kids can't be going every day, or they have to quarantine
Or for a
period.
while, right.
Well, these kids are eligible for the vaccine, which does mitigate that.
Yeah, you'd like to think so,
Well,
but
yeah, but I mean,
there's some
I think we're
breakthroughs.
seeing so many breakthrough cases that there may very well be situations, or where the kids get sick and are just,
Right.
are home for 2 weeks. And just to make sure that there's a plan in place to keep those kids
Right,
learning and moving, even though they can't be, they can't be traveling for a period of time. So that's my only, just to make sure that's on people's radar.
yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. The other thing I learned this week, because it just, we're coming now to a point, I think, with COVID where the Vermont Department of Health and the contact tracers aren't recommending as much quarantining as they did. And for example, if you're exposed and you're vaccinated, then you don't have to quarantine, But even more importantly, I learned the other day, I think, Christine, you were in on this one, maybe not, but if you've got, like, let's say your example where a Heartland kid, is test positive, those classmates who might be going to Windsor at that point, and so now you got Weathersfield, they're what's called third-party transmitters, so you don't even take them into account unless something happens symptomatically. So, I mean, it's just a matter of trying to follow that science and figure it out. That
I mean, but you can see how it's that teacher.
Oh,
or the
absolutely.
parents of the kids in that classroom know that there's an outbreak in the 8th grade at Heartland.
yeah, it's going
They're
to raise
say,
a little more
"Don't bust
anxiety.
those kids
Yeah.
over here.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a
Um,
good point.
So anyway, so just to make sure that that's on,
On the radar,
everyone's thinking like, how do we keep those kids up to date
Yeah,
if that
that's right.
happens?
if they have to
Hopefully it
quarantine.
won't, if it does, how do we keep them up to date?
Yeah. And how did your son get over to? Did you drop the?
We had to drive, yeah, because the buses are so early.
I
that,
know,
like,
it's
we'd have
very
to-
early.
We'd have to leave the house at 6:30 and then do
And then come
two
back.
totally
Yeah.
separate drives to Heartland.
But they took the bus back.
So, but he took the bus back, yeah, they all
Okay,
take the
good,
bus back,
good,
yeah.
yeah.
But it's, and it was fine. I mean, I had complaining from my younger kid who had to ride all the way to Windsor and then come back.
What
to
are we doing
Heartland.
this
So I had to
for?
listen to that, but other than that,
We could time with just you.
I know, I was like,
Little
bring a
bonding.
book, you can read it in the back of the car.
Yeah.
She wasn't too happy with it, but she'll get used to it. It'll be fine.
That's funny.
Okay, I'm gonna move us on to items for action.
Thank you. This one.
We good? Okay. Items for action. The only one I have is to hire Heather Vitale. So I will take a motion to hire Heather Vitale for the 4th grade.
I move that we hire Heather Kelly.
Okay, so Colleen, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Sarah, okay. Any discussion? Usually we do we have to see residents? No, I guess we don't. We take your word for it. Yeah, yeah. I was thinking of some other things we have. Okay, so any discussion? No, I heard good things. I talked to some 4th graders that were happy. So,
That's great.
all those in favor of hiring Heather, our last minute Woohoo, get her in the door, score.
That was close.
So when
Yes.
was she hired? I didn't know at the last minute.
It was
Oh my
probably,
gosh.
it was like within the last,
last couple of weeks, yeah.
Like in the last 2 weeks.
And our second grade teacher just arrived. Set up all weekend in her room.
Wow.
Started today. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Um,
but she's here.
And our 3rd grade teachers pulled together all the materials for our 4th grade teacher. A lot of the, yeah,
That's good.
I mean, it was really, it sounds like it was an all hands on deck.
All hands on deck.
Everybody did it.
In this weekend, helping her second grade teacher set up her classroom. So, yeah, it's great.
Okay, all those in favor of hiring Heather Vitale for the 4th grade, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Okay, that was unanimous. Okay, setting the next agenda. So I think,
what's our date next month?
yes, that's the part I always forget.
What are we with the, usually the first Monday.
Tuesday.
First Tuesday.
Are we the first Tuesday?
Yeah, we
So that
changed.
wasn't just because of Labor Day then, right?
No. So that would be the 5th.
That looks like the 5th.
October.
Why is that?
Okay. Okay, so, we can take hiring off.
Take her off. I hope, fingers crossed, yes.
We'll keep COVID on there, but maybe one day it'll come off too. One day. Okay,
Preliminary budget discussion?
Yes.
Would be helpful.
and I think we're gonna have I'd like to keep equity on there because I feel like we've really made some good, we haven't done anything yet, but I feel like we've made good discussion progress. Do we think we'll have something for building committee? We may have some numbers.
Yeah, so we've heard from Jim, from Banwell, how much the walkthrough will cost, we can then discuss putting that on. Getting that.
I'm gonna ask you about the sprinkler, right? That's the
Yeah,
Safety-
sprinkler for
safety
safety.
grant.
Yeah.
Have you guys had a full building committee meeting? Because last time it was just the board members or the.
We tried.
I tried. There were some people who couldn't come, and so it was still a small, we did have a community member.
Yeah.
And Dave.
And Dave, and
We had
Mr.
Dave
came
Lumsden.
again, which was great, yeah.
Yeah,
he's
that's
very
nice. Yeah, he wants to be involved, which is
Yeah.
great.
And this, I was so glad John Harrison mentioned the community schools bill, because that's a lot of our thinking.
Absolutely.
I just feel
Around,
like that's,
bringing in the rec department and bringing in the town
That's great.
on these discussions is how can we create that?
Did you have anything about budget? Did you say I missed that?
yeah, Christine said preliminary budget.
Yeah, I would think, and probably,
Start talking about it.
yeah, I think it's worth, yeah. That we could pull something off.
And I guess maybe it would be part of COVID, but I'd kind of like to look at, I want to keep the discussion of how things morph in the winter.
That's a good idea, yeah. Winter
So-
activities.
Yeah, COVID winter.
Yeah.
Winter activities, yeah.
COVID winter.
Sounds like a Christmas card.
God, I'll start singing
The COVID winter. I feel a song coming on.
Yeah. Okay, that looks like a good agenda to me.
No, that's good. But let's decide now. You've had this fine
Oh, right.
experience with the owl, so we have to decide. There's a couple of things. I'm told that Cat TV is either that's their owl, actually.
Yes.
We're
Oh.
using our owl.
Oh,
so
they
we
have an
can-
owl now?
So now they have and they may have more owls, I'm told. So I don't know whether or not they would bring an owl and set it up for us and use it at Heartland. This was an experiment here, right? But I know we
Yeah.
don't want to permanently necessarily, right, move away from Heartland for your local board meetings. But
Did you guys bring your owl?
Chico did, yes.
A little feedback as a participant on this end.
yes, what do you think?
The broad view, like at the top, I really can't see anybody, like the long stretchy view. That doesn't really do anything for me in the sense of being able to see who's what. And audio was a little hard with people at the end of the table, like Colleen and Sarah and like that end. Like I saw David and Nikki and then pretty much the entire meeting, but not much of anybody else.
Where's the audio?
That's what she was just
She was
saying.
saying the audio.
The audio, she
was hard.
couldn't hear that end of the table all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're not, are we even on there? Oh, I guess we're.
Yeah, you're
oh,
over there.
There we are.
Yeah. I would say your owl is also not in the center of the room.
The other thing I
That's
thought of too is just, if you have public participation and people are writing comments, like who's keeping track and making sure, like comments within the Google, the Google Meet. is
Being in
being
the chat room, yeah.
That was Wendy. Oh, there's more.
There's
Look
a
at that.
lot, okay.
Right, there's a lot of F.
We didn't even know you were coming.
No, that's good. Wendy
We
Moody.
just
we've
saw
seen-
all of
so-
your messages.
Yeah, I mean, we can because I have to always have my computer on, so there is a way to track those if we have to. And I'm also told that if, Cat TV just told us, that if we put the owl in the center of the room, the way we're set up now, we'd probably get a better panoramic view of that. I think this is still a technology in progress.
It moves onto the person.
And I think like David, right now, all I see is you and Nikki in the owl boxes. So I don't know if that's because does it automatically supposed to follow who's talking and who's loudest?
It moves to the audio, yeah, mostly the person who's the loudest or speaks up.
Okay, so you're the loudest, David, in the group is what it comes down to.
Surprise you, Beth?
But we're also the closest.
Yeah.
You gotta yell.
Yeah, so I think it's worth experimenting again and just making sure it's in the center to be able to hear people, because if that's how it's supposed to react, I think that.
Because he's typing a meter and you over there.
Angie, go test.
Test.
I don't see Angie. Whoop.
Test.
I just keep seeing David and Nikki.
The owl does not like me.
Is for everyone to have their own camera on them.
Yeah.
So the most equitable way to do these meetings is when some people are home and some people are, is to have everybody have their own
Camera from their
camera.
laptop.
Yeah.
So everyone has an equal box and it's,
Oh, Sarah, you showed up.
I was talking.
Yeah, there you go, Sarah. There you are.
See how that works? Isn't that slick? But you're right, it's not the quickest. It does have a delay. Yeah, the problem we have when we all have our laptops open and we've got a public is turn your volume off, you turn your volume on, I'll turn my volume off. Oh, I forgot to turn my volume off. And it gets really, this way, everybody got their volume off and you wouldn't even really have to have your laptops open, right? I mean,
The picture quality isn't as good as just the Google Meets pictures.
I
Like
thought
David, you
that
look
too.
nice and clear in your Google Meet, but in the owl, you're kind of pixelated-y a little.
And remember, Cat TV has the ability, like they did last time, to just, you're really working off of the Google Meet at that point. So the clarity is pretty good. And I know that was a setup we used last time at Heartland. So we could try that one more time and then
Yeah, I think we go back to Heartland next time. And
we
we'll.
just gotta find the
I'm
right
not saying to
room.
abandon it. I just think we need to have equal volume and figure out the placement kind of thing. It just warrants more experimentation.
Need to build an owl nest right here.
I want to try the center. I like the center.
It is cute. I mean, the eyes.
It's cute.
Yeah.
Very cute.
Oh, never mind. We have a few votes for cute, one for creepy. Okay.
All right, back to
Okay,
Heartland next
turn
His
time.
head, it's
Okay, so we're on to, we set the next agenda, we're on to executive session. I personally think that we should have an executive session to discuss personnel staffing. And so I don't know if other people will, I don't think it needs to be long. I'd like to have a quick one.
And we could move it to another part of it.
Yeah, why don't we, is that?
So they
we
can
move to
clean,
the-
because you guys have to clean up, right?
Can we
all
move
that.
to the, the lobby of
Yeah,
your office?
Sure.
And just, we can
Or
have a
your,
quick
maybe
standing
in
motion.
your,
stand up.
Somebody take me?
Stand up, yeah.
oh, wait a minute, we got Beth though, right? So,
Oh, sorry, Beth.
Yeah,
Yes, we
Beth.
don't want to leave you. We can,
But if David just takes his computer, then I can hear everybody.
I'll take you, yeah, I'll
Okay.
take you with me, Beth. How about that?
Don't leave me
Great,
behind.
up on that one. Oh, we need to, I need a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn.
Okay, we got Sarah. Second. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we adjourned at 8:48. Well, I guess, no, we didn't
I'm gonna
adjourn.
stop us
I'm
from
gonna
recording.
motion to move into executive session.
That's what you
Yeah.
wanted.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we're gonna edit that adjournment to executive session. David, are you still recording or are we?
Yes, I am. So Wendy's got that.
Okay, so executive session at 8:48 and then we'll tell you when we adjourn.